It is Friday, May the 8th, 2026, and it's time for The Swamp, where I cover the daily happenings inside the federal machine. So please give the video a quick like and subscribe. Every article in the video will be linked right below in the description, and if you don't have time for the long-form videos, the highlights from tonight will begin dropping on the channel tomorrow morning. We're going to fire things off with the Democrats. Huge news out of Virginia. Shocking news to some, not so shocking for others. We're going to get into it. Breaking from the Democrat Party on the X platform, the Virginia Supreme Court has voted to overturn the results of the state's special election. This decision silences the voices of Virginians who approved an updated congressional map that levels the playing field ahead of the midterms. The fight continues. And in case you haven't been following politics too closely, the Democrats, they attempted to railroad a new congressional map through Virginia, which would pave the way for Democrats to have 11 congressional seats and Republicans only 1. Or was it 10? No, actually, I think it's actually 11 in total. So it would give Democrats 10 congressional seats and Republicans only 1. Currently, Republicans have 5, I think. Maybe it's 4 or 5. You'd think I'd know this before I started, but whatever. So anyway, huge news from the House Democrats. Republicans are on notice. We are still coming for their majority. All options are on the table. So what options are they talking about exactly? We're not going to fight. We're going to use every tool in our tool chest. It was the Virginia Supreme Court who overturned the decision. The buck stops with the Virginia Supreme Court. The only avenue from there is to go up to the United States Supreme Court, and we already saw how they handled racial gerrymandering, which Democrats are absolutely complicit in doing. And I would argue that probably some of those districts that they were trying to flip into blue districts were probably drawn along racial lines, which is unconstitutional. So this whole using every tool in our arsenal to fight back against this. All the options are on the table. I don't know what the hell exactly it is they're talking about. I'm sure if they explain it, it's going to be extremely vague at best. So maybe they're talking about blanket balloting their entire state. Every registered voter gets a ballot mailed to their address no matter what. All their past addresses they lived at, they're all going to get balloted with your ballot over there too, maybe. I'm not saying that's what they're doing exactly, but it's just my own opinion. Maybe that could be happening. Also, they're refusing to take dead people off of the voter rolls, as we just saw in Minnesota this week. So I would imagine if they're blanket balloting the entire state with every registered voter who gets a ballot at their address, I can only imagine that dead people, they're probably having their ballots sent out too, because why else would they keep the dead people on the voter rolls? But whatever, I don't want to stray too far off topic. Anyway, this is the statement from Chairman Aguilar on the Virginia Supreme Court's ruling on congressional maps. You know what? I'm going to just read it from here. It's a little bit larger here. Today, the Virginia Supreme Court rejected the will of the voters, plain and simple, which, by the way, they did vote, a couple of weeks ago. It was put to a ballot measure, and the voters of Virginia were able to go out and cast their ballots, and I will read the exact text of that ballot, and you could read for yourself whether or not if it was extremely biased or if it was framed heavily in favor of Democrats and it wasn't framed in a fair way. Again, that's just my opinion, but I'll read it word for word so you can judge for yourself. Quote, last month, millions of Virginians stood up to the Trump administration and made their voices heard at the ballot box. They made it clear they were not going to let Republicans rig the elections in their favor when they hadn't earned their votes with their cruel, corrupt, and costly policies. Yeah, but Virginia, the districts have existed in Virginia for many years. So I don't know what they're talking about as far as rigging in Virginia. The only rigging, obviously, came from the other side. That's why Democrats have worked to bring this decision to the voters themselves, while Republicans continue drawing new congressional maps in back rooms and in the dead of night. Democrats have continued to put this choice directly to the American people. Democrats aren't afraid to conduct our business out in the open because we know the American people are smart and will see through Republican lies. Democrats won't stop fighting back. Republicans are on notice. We are still coming for their majority. All options are on the table. So before I go any further, let's just read the ballot and see what it was that the people of Virginia voted on when they cast their vote, which got just a slim margin over 50%. It was something like 52% or whatever. It wasn't by a wide margin who voted yes for this. So this is the proposed constitutional amendment that people voted on. Question: should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming elections, while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census? So that's the question. All it's saying is, would you like to have a fair election? I think everybody would say yes to that. But of course, they don't go into any detail with regard to Democrats redistricting. So they get 10 for Democrats and only 1 for Republicans, even though an estimated 30% of people who live in Virginia who are registered, they're Republican. That doesn't sound very fair to me. That Democrats would end up with what, like 91 or 92% of the representation of Virginia. That isn't fair, but that's not what they detailed in the constitutional amendment. So that's what the people voted on, and it passed again by a narrow majority. And of course, the Supreme Court of Virginia, which I was surprised to see. I was checking online. I was asking, I asked Google, I asked Grok, and they were all saying that it was a pretty slim odds that the Virginia Supreme Court were going to overturn the decision, because typically the state Supreme Court doesn't overturn what the people voted on. They usually tend to just leave it be, leave it as is. Plus, the Democrats, they're especially angry because they spent up to $80 million campaigning for this ballot measure. So that's a lot of money that they just lost because they didn't get those congressional districts. Plus, you got Florida, who just potentially added 4 Republican seats, taking away 4 Democrat seats. And we're going to get to Tennessee in a little bit. Also, the Supreme Court has ordered the state of Louisiana to redraw their maps, which will probably wipe out 2 more Democrat seats. So Democrats, they're losing all over the place as far as their potential gains in the House. But we will see what ends up happening. From Hakeem Jeffries, Timu Obama. Most of these are going to come from the House because the midterms, it really, like the whole redistricting thing in Virginia pertains to the House. It doesn't really pertain to the Senate because every state gets 2 senators. So, I kind of stuck to the House with regard to all of these different posts that I came across today. So anyway, Timu Obama, the decision by the Virginia Supreme Court to overturn the will of more than 3 million voters will not stand. Well, I don't know exactly what the hell you plan on doing about it, because it's the state Supreme Court. Are you going to appeal it up to the United States Supreme Court, who already made it very clear that you're not gonna be racially gerrymandering, first of all, and second of all, you're taking it up to 6 conservative justices versus 3 liberal justices. I don't know. That's probably what they're going to end up doing. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, but, good luck with that. Over 3 million Virginia citizens cast their votes in a free and fair election, yet the state Supreme Court has chosen to invalidate their voice, disenfranchise them, and violate their due process rights. The decision to overturn an entire election is an unprecedented and undemocratic action that cannot stand. So really, what the Democrats technically did, there's a committee, a commission, I think they call it a committee. It's nonpartisan, and this independent committee in Virginia is specifically tasked with drawing new congressional maps. I believe it's after the census, so it's every 10 years. So for the Democrats to completely bypass them, because that's what they did. They didn't go to this committee to get the maps redrawn. They completely bypassed them altogether. Plus, it's even more unusual because we're in the middle of the decade. We're not anywhere near census time yet. And so, needless to say, they didn't follow the proper procedure as stated in the Virginia Constitution. So this is why the Virginia Supreme Court had an issue with it, and obviously why Republicans had an issue with it too, because they did not go through the proper procedure. All right, so MAGA Republicans have adopted voter suppression as a strategy, as also evidenced by far-right extremists on the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act to open the door to a Jim Crow-like attack on black representation across the American South. Well, I would argue that if you are strategically drawing congressional districts to essentially just draw all the way around all these black neighborhoods and make it so that the majority of your congressional districts are black, isn't that segregation? That seems like that's awfully segregation-isk to me. I don't know. What do I know? We are exploring all options to overturn this shocking decision. No matter what it takes, House Democrats will win in November so we can help rescue this nation from the extremism being unleashed by Donald Trump and Republicans. Our fight is not over. We're just getting started. All right. There you go, Timo Obama. And from Catherine Clark, who is the Democratic whip in the House, she says, Democrats' fight is not over. See, they all just guarantee this fight ain't over. We will win back the House in November and deliver an agenda that families deserve. My statement on today's Virginia Supreme Court decision, probably copy-paste, but I'll read it anyway. Last month, the citizens of Virginia approved a new congressional map to ensure our elections are free and fair. Today, the Virginia Supreme Court struck down the will of the people by unilaterally overturning an entire election. Voter suppression is the core of the Republican strategy to keep power by whatever means necessary, all so they can continue to line their own pockets while driving up costs for everyone else. Now, I think illegal immigration did plenty of that. Even as they disenfranchise Virginians, they are also attempting to racially gerrymander across the South. Dude, the Supreme Court literally just days ago struck that down and made it completely illegal to do exactly what she's saying. After Trump's judges gutted the Voting Rights Act, MAGA extremists believe they can steal the midterm elections by robbing the American people of their vote. But they are sorely mistaken. Dude, Democrats are pissed. Well, like I said, they just lost $80 million worth of campaign money because they dumped it all into this nonsense. Our fight is not over. We are using every tool, here we go with the toolbox, at our disposal to reverse this decision and stop the GOP's efforts to rig the system in favor of the billionaire class. How the hell are they going to reverse this decision? Am I missing something? Is there a higher court above the Virginia Supreme Court besides the United States Supreme Court? House Democrats are going to win back the House in November and deliver an agenda that working families deserve, to lower costs, which Democrats never do, to protect health care, which they skyrocket in cost, and to fight corruption, which completely comprises the entirety of the Democratic Party. All right, so let's go on to Jasmine Crockett. So let me get this right. When the people decide something is inherently wrong, but when Republicans ram through racist maps at the behest of an immoral, incompetent, immature idiot, there's nothing to see and it's perfectly okay. All elections matter, except the Republican ones, of course. These people have cheated themselves into power and will violate any laws, constitutions, or basic rules of decency and humanity. Clearly, she doesn't know anything about the Virginia Constitution. And to continue to drag our asses deeper into debt for ballrooms while people can't afford food, gas, or healthcare. Look, I still haven't gotten any ironclad proof that there in fact is $1 billion worth of taxpayer money that's going into the ballroom. As far as I understand, I haven't seen anything else yet. The ballroom is still 100% privately funded. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But Democrats keep insisting that this ballroom, all of a sudden, Trump or the Trump administration is going to take $1 billion worth of tax dollars and they're going to fortify it because of what happened during the White House press correspondent shooting or something like that. The Confederate States are for sure showing that they were never ridded of their racism. Well, that's laughable because the Confederate States were literally the Democratic Party. We had to elect Abraham Lincoln, the first ever Republican president, to get rid of slavery because the Democrats almost 100% controlled all of that. And when they lost, they got really pissed off to the point where they formed the Ku Klux Klan. That wasn't the Republicans. That was the Democrats. You could read that in any American history book. All right, so politics and poll trackers with Jasmine Crockett. What she tagged into her post. Breaking news, the Supreme Court of Virginia has struck down new congressional map that Virginia voters passed last month. Of course, they framed it I guess they framed it fairly. Yeah, the Virginia voters did pass it last month. However, I'm of the opinion that the ballot measure that they read word for word was completely biased, 100% biased. Because in no way, shape, or form was this map fair. This isn't fair. Republicans get one single district while Democrats get, I think it's 10. Yeah, it's 10. They get 10 and Republicans get 1. Like I said, even though 30% of registered voters in Virginia are Republican, I don't believe Virginia keeps strict numbers on exactly who is registered. It's just estimates. Like the estimate is something like 30% Republicans. I think it's upper 40 percentile Democrats and somewhere around 18% are independents. That could really vote either way. All right, so let me see. So this is from the Circuit Court of Tazewell County. On March 6, 2026, the General Assembly of Virginia submitted to Virginia voters a proposed constitutional amendment that authorizes partisan gerrymandering of congressional districts in the Commonwealth. We hold that the legislative process employed to advance this proposal violated Article 12, Section 1 of the Constitution of Virginia. This constitutional violation incurably taints the resulting referendum vote and nullifies its legal efficacy. Opinion by Justice D. Arthur Kelsey, May 8th, 2026, handed down today. Hot off the press, hot off the judicial press. And I got more. We got Kamala Harris chiming in. Last month in Virginia, the people made their voices heard at the ballot box and voted for new congressional maps. Today, the Virginia Supreme Court ignored the will of the people and overturned those democratically chosen maps. This ruling gives a boost to Donald Trump's effort to rig. He's gonna rig again. The 2026 elections and the Republicans' long game to attack voting rights. Well, what did Trump say in the Oval Office the other day? He said something like, when I finally leave the Oval Office in 12 years, or 9 years, I think he said 9 or 12 years, something like that. We are rightfully outraged, but we will not give up. We must continue our fight to restore the power of the people. Don't you mean the power of the Democratic Party? because Democratic Party, they put party over country. And Senator Chris Van Hollen, another Democrat, obviously a senator. Unlike Texas, North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, and Florida, Virginia put its redistricting referendum up to the will of the people. Framed heavily biased. They voted, and the redistricting amendment won, fair and square. Not fair at all. Shall we bring up the ballot measure once again? This ruling throws out their votes and ignores Virginia's will. And we've got an article from Axios. I think Axios is pretty left-wing most of the time. And, of course, I shared the constitutional amendment again. No, they didn't. They framed a highly misleading ballot question. And, all right, so where's that article? Virginia Supreme Court throws out redistricting referendum results. And I can only imagine just showing this graphic which side that Axios is probably going to lean toward. And obviously, I haven't been on here because this is really small. The Virginia Supreme Court overturned the results of the state's redistricting referendum, which voters narrowly approved last month. The 4-3 ruling upends one of the most closely watched redistricting fights in the country. Well, yeah, because Democrats stood to gain the most out of it. It follows months of legal challenges over whether the referendum was unconstitutional, which it absolutely and very obviously was. The big picture, the Friday decision says the amendment process pushed by Democrats violated the state's constitution, effectively blocking the effort to redraw congressional maps mid-decade. That's after the state spent $5.2 million to pay for the special election, and outside groups raised nearly $100 million to sway voters. Okay, well, I read $80 million, so according to Axios, they seem to think that it was up to almost $100 million. The new map would have been in effect for the November midterms. It was expected to shift the state's congressional split from 6-5 favoring Democrats to 10-1. So there you go. Does that look fair to you? Again, with the ballot measure, we just want to restore fairness. That's all we want to do. You know, because 30% of the people of Virginia who are Republicans having only 9% representation, that's totally fair. Between the lines, it was, okay, yeah, Axios, reading between the lines, it sounds like Axios. It was a move Democrats said would have countered Republican-led states that redrew districts to add GOP seats in a closely divided U.S. House. Okay, so basically, if that's actually true, if that's really the way the Democrats saw it, then that ballot measure with regard to restoring fairness in Virginia's election, that was complete and utter bullshit. All they were trying to do is trying to match Texas and match Florida because Republicans, they were redrawing their maps, which probably in most, if not all arguments, they were trying to weed out the racial gerrymandering set forth by Democrats. So that would essentially, in my opinion, mean that they were, lying to the people of Virginia because they weren't trying to restore fairness. They were trying to get back at the big, bad, evil Republicans so we could seize power. Republicans who have repeatedly sued to block the redistricting vote have called it extreme, illegal, and hyper-partisan. And a central part of the case during oral arguments concerned what qualifies as the next general election under Virginia's constitution. Virginia law requires amendments to move through 2 General Assembly sessions, one before the House has an election last November and one after. Republicans have argued that lawmakers had improperly advanced the amendment after early voting for the 2025 House elections had already begun. Meanwhile, Democrats have said that an, quote, election is a single day in November. Yeah, okay, well then, I guess then Democrats would have no problem with any legislation that's passed or put to the floor by Republicans that would make Election Day a single day event. In other words, if the ballot counting centers, if they receive any ballots at 12:01 a.m. the next day, they're all thrown out. You really think Democrats are going to be okay with that? No, because they don't believe Election Day is a single day. They believe it could go on for weeks and weeks and weeks because we got a lot of counting to do. What they're saying, siding with Republicans, the High Court ruled that Virginia's general election includes the early voting period, not just Election Day. I mean, yeah, isn't that something that Democrats have been championing for forever? That they want a blanket ballot mail-in all across the state and give people all so much time, all the time that they need in the world to get their ballot in order, get it all filled out, get it sealed up, and then drop it in their mailbox. Or maybe just hand it off to someone who is ballot harvesting in their local neighborhood, because that's legal in most, if not all, blue states. The other side, Virginia House Speaker Don Scott, a Democrat, said in a statement, "We respect the decision of the Supreme Court of Virginia." Okay, well, that's respectable, because you should respect their decision. But Attorney General Jay Jones blasted the ruling as politically motivated, accusing the court of putting politics over the rule of law and silencing the voices of Virginia voters. Again, they completely bypassed this nonpartisan committee. The committee's supposed to draw the congressional maps, not the Democrats, but they did. So they absolutely didn't adhere to the state's constitution, the Democrats. Jones said his office is reviewing every legal pathway forward. All right. Well, like I said, it's going to be kind of a hard hurdle to get over the state Supreme Court's decision, but all right. The state Supreme Court overturning voters' decision is rare, but it happened at least once in 1958. And I also read that, which like I said, Grok and Google, they made the argument that it's most likely that they are not going to overturn the decision of the voters. So I had very little hope that this was even going to get overturned because it rarely happens. For instance, the last time it seems to have happened was back in 1958. The High Court ruled that Arlington residents had voted on an unconstitutional law in 1956 to struck down the election results. If Democrats appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, it wouldn't be the first time Virginia election disputes have landed there. In 2024, former Attorney General Jason Miyares won a last-minute U.S. Supreme Court ruling allowing Virginia to resume its voter purge program days before Election Day. What we're watching, whether Democrats take the case to the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, look. They say they have all these tools in their tool chest. They have like an entire mechanics shop full of tools in their tool chest that they have at their disposal. I can't think of more than one. You got to take it up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I'm not so sure if the U.S. Supreme Court's really going to help them out very much because they blatantly violated their state's constitution. It was crystal clear to the point where even the Virginia Supreme Court overturned it. And look, if the Virginia Supreme Court isn't going to overturn that push that Democrats had to redistrict Virginia, I highly, highly doubt. In fact, I would probably make a Vegas bet on it that the U.S. Supreme Court ain't not gonna side with the Democrats on this. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Rep. Shontel Brown, Virginians made their choice heard at the ballot box. Today, the Virginia Supreme Court unilaterally overturned that election. At the same time, Republicans are attempting racial gerrymanders across the South. No, they're not, because the Supreme Court just made that unconstitutional. You are lying, ma'am. The fight is not over. We will use every tool we have to fight back. Again with the toolbox. Rep. Jim McGovern, the Virginia Supreme Court's ruling is an insult to the majority of citizens who voted to fight back against Trump's attempt to steal the midterm elections. So is Trump like hiding inside the Virginia Supreme Court? Does he got like guns to heads? Does he have like his cronies, his secret police that are standing behind the Supreme Court justices, ordering them to make such a decision? I mean, come on, man, these people are retarded. The entire GOP strategy is voter suppression. We must use every tool at our disposal to reverse this awful decision. And from Mays, the kids on MSNBC were so happy about Virginia saving democracy a couple of weeks ago. Let's check out this first video on MS
Now. It's kind of like the Iran thing. Like, he didn't expect them to fight back. He doesn't expect anyone to do anything. Like, he doesn't think back past the first step. You know, he's like, I'll do what I want to do, and then everyone's just going to roll over. And when people don't roll over, it like takes him by surprise, you know? I'm good for Virginia.
Here's why I think this is so important and such a big win for Virginia, and kudos to Abigail Spanberger and Louise Lucas and the others for pushing it in Virginia. But I think sometimes there's fatalism on the anti-Trump, pro-democracy side about how, they're going to cheat in these elections. And, I hear that a lot from people. They tried to cheat. Like, this was a case of them trying to cheat. They tried to do this mid-cycle redistricting, and it backfired spectacularly. They're going to end up losing seats on net when you add up the states that ended up doing redistricting changes. And I think that's a good lesson. And that might not be a lesson in quote-unquote good government, but it's a lesson in trying to actually fight for a democracy that works.
Politics still exists. Public opinion still exists. Like, all that stuff is still there. People still have leverage.
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone's son or something.
That's whether you watching at home as a participant in American democracy.
Well, okay. I mean, I have to admit, that was kind of satisfying to see. Townhall.com, CNN political analyst admits Democrats suffered a huge loss today in Virginia. This is a big blow. Hakeem Jeffries, Obama, was in on this, and it has been a big waste of money. Here's CNN.
This is a big blow. Hakeem Jeffries, I basically wrote a column that was like, this was great for Hakeem Jeffries because he was all in on it. $38 million spent from a group affiliated with him. Obama was in on this.
God, they look miserable.
Now this is a big defeat. And one of the reasons why Virginia was so important as
that
well.
That is not coffee in those mugs.
Democrats were anticipating this Supreme Court decision, which is also going to have massive effects. So they felt like they've got this sort of tranche of 4 seats, and now, of course, that's gone. Again, they're still hopeful that they can maybe get 1 or 2 of these seats, but it has been a big
what about
waste
the toolbox?
of money. They'll have to pivot maybe to 2028 because this was a procedural decision. It looks like the voters, at least by a small margin, wanted these maps, but they're going to have to wait at least 2 years to get these maps.
Or, of course, they were misled with their decision because, look, if you read the ballot, all you want is fairness. I mean, look, if you are politically, I mean, I don't really want to use the word ignorant because it sounds bad, but, you know, that's what a lot of people are, including a lot of registered voters. They don't really keep up with political affairs, especially on the local level, on a daily basis, or probably not even on like a monthly basis. But they just go in there and they just read it, and it says like, well, you want our elections to be fair, right? Well, yeah, well, of course I do. I mean, if I didn't know anything else that was going on, I probably would have voted yes, because that's exactly what it said. It was like, wait, you just want fairness? Yeah, okay, I want fairness. So anyway, with all that said, it didn't win by a crazy wide margin. You know what? Let me grab the percentage real quick. Okay, here we go. Virginia redistricting referendum, which was on April the 21st. Special election, 1,604,000 people voted yes. Just 51.7%. 48.3% voted no. 1.499 million people voted no. There were 3.1 million votes in total. So when Democrats say that 3.1 million people, they turned out and they made their voices heard, well, yeah, a sizable, like almost half of those 3 million people didn't want this to happen. But anyway, the margin was by around 3 points, or roughly 105,000 votes that were in favor. So there you go. That's the percentages. So again, 51%, right? 51.7%. And from Nick Sorter, LMFAO, a random leftist woman is outside the Virginia Supreme Court screaming incoherently at the building. The meltdowns are glorious. Shame, shame on every Supreme Court justice who voted to take away our rights as a people. Unhinged screeching. Of course, that's Nick Sorter's opinion. I mean, I kind of feel sad for this lady because, look, I would say at face value, she's probably horrifically brainwashed. I think it's incredibly sad. You know, I would not want to dunk on people like that. Although, you know, she really should be controlling herself as a grown-ass adult, but here we go.
Shame! Shame on every single Supreme Court justice who voted to take away our rights as a people to express Shame for taking away our ability to tell our things that we want when other states and hellscape of the nation are doing it without their voters' consent.
Oh, come on, man. I want to see the guys walk past her. What they were saying. What the fuck are you on? All right. It's from Jim Acosta. Trump gets to redraw maps in his states, but Democrats cannot do the same. What is happening to our democracy? So obviously he knew that his post was just completely ridiculous because he cut it off at just 2 comments. He ended up disabling his ability for people to comment. And he did get 11,000 likes, but I assume he probably would have been brutally ratioed, given the fact that it got him over 1 million views. So he replied to the Associated Press, breaking the Virginia Supreme Court strikes down voter-approved congressional redistricting plan, dealing a major blow to Democrats. I already read the Axios article, so I'll just repost that in the description if you want to check that out from the AP, because it's probably going to say a lot of the same stuff. Benny Johnson, Tennessee passes new congressional map eliminating the state's only Democrat district. Protesters have an absolute meltdown moving away from Virginia, heading into Tennessee. This happened last night, probably as I was recording last night's episode of The Swamp. So let's see what happened in Tennessee. Oh, of course, they pulled the fire alarm. Of course they're firing off air horns. To be honest, that sounds celebratory. Air horn. Usually I associate the air horn with people getting dunked on. A very 2016 era. How are all these people even allowed in the building? That's what I want to know. Because it's the people's house. All right. Dude is shaking. He's shaking in his boots. Obviously, the whole outrage mob is very well funded. It's a very small minority in the state of Tennessee, I would imagine. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised the majority of these people don't even live in Tennessee. I mean, what the hell, man? How are they allowing all these people in the building like this? This is crazy. crazy. Very free state. Very red state. The old Democrat flags, you notice that? Confederate flag. The old flag of the Democrats. Of course, they don't know that. How dare Republicans get rid of segregation? It's so evil what they're doing. Democrats must have segregation. They demand it. That's what they're demanding. Segregation for all. Justin J. Pearson, my speech on the Tennessee House floor today as our state voted to eliminate Memphis's only majority black congressional district. Well, yeah, because it's exactly, what I said. Well, it's probably racially gerrymandered, almost certainly racially gerrymandered, actually. And it's probably not a good idea to congressionally segregate people. All right, so Justice Democrats, everyone needs to watch Justin J. Pearson's floor speech from the Tennessee State House, and it's a quote. It's a little long. It's like 4 minutes long. I assume it's going to be a bit emotional. All right, I'll just keep it there. It might be emotional.
These maps are racist tools of white supremacy at the behest of the most powerful white supremacist in the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. Memphis is the most beautiful place on the planet.
Well, it is, since Trump's task force went in there and rooted out all the crime, right?
Parents, my grandmothers,
remember the Memphis task force?
Ancestors' bones rest. And what you are doing today is eviscerating the only black majority congressional district in our state.
Yeah, racial gerrymandering is illegal now.
We are majority black. We are here because this Republican Party has to seek to steal elections and seats. Because the president and the
but Republicans freed the slaves, though. So why is he so mad about that?
The suffering and the struggling of everyday
Democrats, man, they got people so damn brainwashed. It is crazy.
Targeting and cracking District 9 into pieces for more
District 9. That was a crazy movie.
And racial dominance and white supremacy in the state of Tennessee. And we need to realize that the Calais decision that you all are basing your decisions off of, that gutted the Voting Rights Act, that Voting Rights Act was paid in blood. It was not just a parchment of paper signed into law. It was paid in blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Paid in blood by Medgar Evers, paid in blood by Fannie Lou Hamer. It's been paid in blood year over year, time after time, assassination after assassination, lynching after lynching.
So by the Democrats, of course. There wasn't a whole lot of lynchings from Republicans, I wouldn't imagine.
Constitutional Democratic
I don't know, I've been wrong before. I don't remember reading that in my history books.
Currently being gutted and seeking to be gutted by this chamber, by this House, this Senate, and this state. What is happening here is immoral and wrong. And I was reading my Bible early this morning.
Well, it doesn't sound like it. You're calling everybody a bunch of, Nazis and racists or white supremacists. That's not what Jesus would do.
That white supremacy is seeming to gain. Why, again, does it seem like the pillars of pain that we have felt and experienced for over 400 years in this country continue to rise again? And whispered in the words of this Bible and in the words of those ancestors that have gone before us is just these simple words: we're still here. We are still here. This nation, this state has legislated and legalized the worst things in humanity, including our enslavement, and we are still here. Right in this country where, as one black woman said, your clancestors enslaved us, denied us of
formed
our
by the
rights,
Democrats, of course.
us 3/5 of a person.
Jim Crow, Democrats.
We are still here. You put us on cotton plantations and
Democrats
tobacco
did.
plantations. You denied our human rights.
I mean, come on, dude. What are we doing here? This is ridiculous.
God, and we are still here. You destroyed Tulsa.
Ask him which political party Abraham Lincoln was a member of.
On Poplar Tree, Shelby County, Tennessee
curious.
had the most lynchings of anywhere in this state where you're taking this district, and we are still here. You've had 3 strikes laws, mass incarceration, denied us of who we are, and we are still here. And today you'll take the only majority black district from us. But I want you to know, and I want my nephew, sons, and the future to know, no matter what you do, no matter how much you try and break us and make us bend and make us quit, we will still be here.
Well, of course you're still going to be here. I mean, you're not moving, right? You're not relocating to another state. I mean, yeah, of course you're going to still be there. All right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still win the district. You're still going to be in a district. I mean, they're not like cutting you completely out of any and all congressional representation. You just might be represented by a Republican. You know, the party that freed all the slaves. That party. You know, you'd think that they would be grateful for that, but I guess not. Anyway, just goes to show, man, just how deep the Democrat brainwashing goes. They shackled everybody's minds because they couldn't physically shackle people anymore, so they had to mentally do exactly that. All right. From Eric Daugherty, just now, Rep. Tim Burchett demands jail time for thug Tennessee State Rep. Justin Pearson, who was the guy we just watched, who intimidated a state trooper. He needs to go to jail, lock the thug up, expel him, move the F back. Boy, the F is wrong with you, you stupid MFer. So that's what this rep who was, you know, screaming all the white supremacy stuff, he got in the face of a state trooper. So let's have a look at that.
Let Rep. Pearson go. Let Rep. Pearson go. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Ted. You stupid mother.
I don't know. What did he do? I didn't see anything. He was standing there, right? All right. I don't know. I guess it's standing in his way, I guess. I guess he's guilty for standing in his way. All right. So Mike Lee, it's an insurrection. Only when Republicans do it. It's partisan gerrymandering, only when Republicans do it. It's norm shattering, only when Republicans do it. Please like and share if you're tired of the double standard. And we've got this guy. He's lighting that Confederate flag that we saw earlier. I mean, a Confederate piece of paper with a Confederate symbol on it. I mean, it's not technically, I guess you would call that a flag. Anyway, so he's going to light that on fire. The old Democrat flag. I find it just really interesting that the state troopers aren't arresting him for setting a fire inside a public building, inside a government building. That's just really surprising to me. Well, they don't want to start a riot or anything. Well, that's why you don't let him in. That's why I don't let him in, like especially when the Tennessee State Capitol is in session, for crying out loud. From Benny Johnson, what is happening in this video from this Tennessee State Capitol is empirically worse than anything that happened on January 6th. Question, should we expect libs to throw a new J6 every time they lose? Is this the norm? It happened 100 times this year. Yeah, you know, that is a fair point. They did storm the Tennessee Capitol, didn't they? It certainly looks like they did. And the Capitol was in session. Like I said, I cannot believe that they just let them waltz right in. How dare they? So, all right, so we already saw that video. So we'll move on. See what else we got. From Really American, Rep. Justin Jones burns the Confederate flag. Okay, so we already saw that. Protesting Tennessee Republicans vote to use the map that eliminates the lone Democratic seat. And from Christopher Webb, Tennessee Republicans did it. The final vote is in. They just gutted the only black majority district to lock in more Republican power. Black voters shut out, representation erased. Call it what it is, a white supremacy power grab and a shameful day for Tennessee, the birthplace of the KKK. Well, yeah, back when it was under, you know, rock solid Democrat control. Of course, that's when it was founded.
This is the most important vote we will ever take. It's the most important vote that the Republicans will ever take. We know where we stand. We stand on the right side of history. This is about race and diluting the representation of blacks and brown people in Memphis,
but you cannot
Tennessee.
racially gerrymander.
This is serious. This is gravely serious for people. People fought, died, were tortured for the right to vote. And so the world needs to be watching this.
Oh my God, what are we doing?
What is happening today will happen to the rest of the country.
But ultimately, the biggest frustration from Memphis residents I speak to is you have to remember every single black legislator that has ever gone to Congress from Tennessee has come from the former District 9. The concern here is if that district is carved up, that just won't happen again and again. It's just one of many things that are frustrating voters here in this moment. The large crowd of people gathered outside of the Senate chambers right now as lawmakers there begin discussion or continue debate over this legislation and prepare for a final vote any moment now. Like, I want to remind you, Chris, some of the conversations we're hearing inside that chamber room, one thing people have pointed out is with the new design of this map, you're going to have areas of Memphis, which I will remind you, a predominantly black city, the final place Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his speech before his assassination, sharing a district with an area like Pulaski, Tennessee, a small farm town 200 miles away that is the birthplace of the KKK. In addition to the historical and cultural significance there, it also speaks to what state lawmakers are pointing to as an operational flaw with this plan. How can a congressional representative effectively speak to the needs of an urban center like Memphis, as well as a smaller farm town 200 miles away?
All right, well, there you go. You heard it from him. Tennessee, new congressional map, passed. But, you know, at the end of the day, Democrats are just desperately trying to seize power. That's really what all of this is truly all about, really. Caleb Hemmer, sad day for democracy in Tennessee. See you in court. All right, guess they're going to head off to court. Breaking, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has signed the new 9-0 congressional map into law. And look, the same thing looks the same in Massachusetts. I'm pretty sure it's Massachusetts. I mean, Massachusetts is solid blue. Matter of fact, there's several states up there in New England that don't have any Republican representation at all. So, you know, this isn't the only state in the entire country where this happened. I mean, this is quite common in blue states, actually, where they've gerrymandered the hell out of those states. Elizabeth Warren, Tennessee Republicans wasted no time redistricting their House map to slice Memphis into 3 different districts. They're blatantly trying to silence black voters. Congress must step up to protect our democracy. And this is from CNN. Tennessee Republicans approve a map carving up the majority black U.S. House district. Because, look, I don't know if what they're specifically standing on is the Supreme Court ruling that racial gerrymandering is now unconstitutional. Well, it was always unconstitutional, really. But the Supreme Court, you know, they made their final ruling saying that it is unconstitutional. I would imagine that's probably, you know, the primary driver for Tennessee, you know, redistricting their map. Anyway, so amid raucous protests, Thursday, Republicans in Tennessee enacted a new U.S. House map that carves up a majority black district in Memphis, reshaping it to the GOP's advantage as part of President Donald Trump's strategy to hold on to a slim majority in the November midterm elections. All right. The final Senate vote unfolded as demonstrators chanted loudly in the galleries and hallways. Democratic State Senator Charlene Oliver stood on her desk in the Senate chamber, holding a banner denouncing the redistricting as a Jim Crow effort. Jim Crow, Democrat, not Republican, Democrat. Then clapping and dancing, of course, you know, just acting like a complete idiot, like standing and dancing around on a desk that's probably older than her great-great-grandparents. Other Democratic senators linked arms in the front of the chamber. Republican leadership quickly adjourned the special session, sending the new map on to Republican Governor Bill Lee, who promptly signed it into law. Tennessee is the first state to pass new congressional districts since a U.S. Supreme Court ruling last week significantly weakened federal Voting Rights Act protections for minorities. But more southern states could follow. Republicans in Louisiana, Alabama, and South Carolina also have taken steps toward redistricting. The court ruled that Louisiana relied too heavily on race when creating a second black majority House district as it attempted to comply with federal law. The High Court's decision altered a decades-old understanding of the law, giving Republicans grounds to try to eliminate majority black districts that have elected Democrats. In other words, racial gerrymandering. You know, the Democrats, they've been pretty good experts at gerrymandering in any possible way that they can. Louisiana has postponed its congressional primary to give time for state lawmakers to craft a new House map. Legislation awaiting a final vote in Alabama would upend the state's congressional primaries if courts allowed the state to change its U.S. House districts. In South Carolina, meanwhile, Republican lawmakers urged on by Trump have taken initial steps to add congressional redistricting to their agenda. The states are the latest to join an already fierce national redistricting battle. Since Trump prodded Texas to redraw its U.S. House districts last year, 8 states have adopted new congressional districts. From that, Republicans think they could gain as many as 13 seats, while Democrats think they could gain up to 10. but some competitive races mean the parties may not get everything they sought in the November elections. As a first step to adopting new House districts, Tennessee lawmakers gave final approval Thursday to legislation, quickly signed into law by Lee, that repealed a state law prohibiting mid-decade redistricting. They then passed a bill that would reopen candidate qualifying until May 15th to allow time for new people to enter the U.S. House primaries and existing candidates to switch districts or drop out. The proposed House map would break up Tennessee's lone Democratic-held district, centered on the majority black city of Memphis, creating a ripple effect of alterations to districts throughout the western and central parts of the state. The geographically compact 9th district that includes Memphis, currently represented by Steve Cohen, who is white, would stretch a couple hundred miles eastward before reaching north toward the Nashville suburbs. Republican House Speaker Cameron Sexton said the proposed districts were drawn based on population and politics, not racial data. But Democrats dismissed such assertions. Well, I mean, it's obviously drawn on racial lines because it's majority black in that district, and that's what you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to be racially gerrymandering districts. These maps are racist tools of white supremacy at the behest of the most powerful white supremacist in the United States of America, Donald Trump, said State Rep Justin Pearson. Of course, we already heard all that. Black Democrat from Memphis who was running for the U.S. House. Oh, so he's running for the House. Maybe that's why he was so pissed off, because, you know, he wanted to become a congressman. Anyway, Republican State Senator John Stevens defended the new districts he sponsored by noting that Democrats in Illinois, Massachusetts, and other states also had drawn congressional districts to their advantage. Yeah, take a look at those, because they are extremely heavily blue. The bill represents Tennessee's attempt to maximize our partisan advantage, he said. It does so at the expense of both Memphis residents and democracy, said Senator London Lamar, a Democrat from Memphis. You cannot take a majority black city, fracture its voting power, and then tell us race has nothing to do with it, she said. Democrats noted that the state Supreme Court in April 2022 rejected a challenge to the current congressional map, finding it was too close to the election to make changes. This year, there's even less time before the August 6th primary, raising the potential of confusion for both candidates and voters, Democrats said. I don't know, maybe that's going to be the one thing that they stand on when they try to challenge that, because I'm assuming that Democrats are going to try to take this up to the Tennessee Supreme Court, and maybe they'll say that. Well, back in 2022, you said it was too close to the primaries, so, or even the midterm or the next election. So I don't know, man. Maybe they might have some standing on that. I guess we'll just have to see. From Red State, between the Virginia gerrymander upset and Red State redistricting, it's looking terrible for Democrats. From redstate.com. You know, I read CNN, might as well go through something that's a little more conservative leaning also. Between the Virginia gerrymander upset and red state redistricting, it's looking terrible for Democrats. And it's by Jennifer Oliver O'Connell. With the Virginia Supreme Court shutdown of the Democrat gerrymander, which attempted to create a 10-1 Democrat map, and the Tennessee legislature's resounding vote on Thursday to institute their redistricting map that eliminated the sole Democrat district in the state, the prospects of Republicans holding their own for the November midterms just got more and more positive. Well, don't forget about Florida. Yeah, see, so here we go. Redistricting update after the Virginia map got struck down. So in Texas passed, gave Republicans potentially, this is all potential. It's not like an ironclad guarantee, even though it's very likely. But Texas could receive up to 5 additional Republicans. Florida could get up to 4 additional Republicans. Ohio 1, Missouri 1, North Carolina 1, Tennessee 1, and then California and Utah. Of course, they did their own redistricting. But you know, it's perfectly fair when California does it. It's beyond fair. It's democratic when California does it. But when a state like Tennessee does it, it's white supremacy. Because, you know, it favors Republicans, so it's got to be bad. The odds of passing per Cauchy. So Louisiana looks like, 1-2. I think that the odds are better that it's going to wind up being 2 for Republicans than 1, but maybe I'm wrong. Alabama, Republicans could gain 1, and South Carolina, Republicans could gain 1 as well. And here's the current midterm projection breakdown now that Virginians have been spared. Crystal ball 2026 House ratings after Virginia redistricting got struck down. Republicans 211, up 3. Democrats 208, minus 4. A toss-up would be 16, or plus 1. So there you go. So that's the House ratings. Alabama, Louisiana, and South Carolina are still at work on their redistricting plans. On Friday, the Alabama legislature is expected to vote to reinstitute maps that district courts have held hostage since 2021. And part of their voting will also involve instituting a winner-take-all primary, saving money and time on special elections. Suffice to say, the Democrats and the activists, but I repeat myself, are not happy. And you know what? Let's take a look and see if the Alabama legislature did vote to reinstitute their maps. Yes. On May 8th, 2026, today, the Alabama legislature gave final approval to bills setting up special primaries and elections if federal courts allow the state to reinstate its prior congressional and legislative maps. The 2023 congressional map previously blocked for diluting black voting power, which I'm assuming they're going to argue that racial gerrymandering is illegal, or it was struck down by the Supreme Court. So that might pave the way for them to be able to successfully redistrict. Governor Kay Ivey signed the legislation. The May 19 primaries will still use the current court-ordered maps. Actual map change depends on the courts and the SCOTUS lifting injunctions. Alabama filed an emergency appeal today. It's a contingency plan, not an immediate reinstatement. So that's the status right now with Alabama. And let's see. Austin Pratt, the fifth and likely last day of the special session, is underway with the same debate from Democratic lawmakers we've been seeing all week. It's HB 1 in the Senate and SB 1 in the House, with Republicans in both chambers seeking final passage in the legislature. All right. So let's see. Things got a little crazy. Not sure exactly what that's on. I must say, as a black Alabaman, this greatly irks me. We are 61 years past the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The U.S. Supreme Court has not gutted it, despite the leftist talking points, and the demographic and electoral landscape in 1965 is vastly different from that in 2026. I vote without fear, I advocate to my representatives, and I make my voice heard. We live under a constitution that still allows for this, and it's high time all voters paid attention to it. No one is taking away voting rights. If these protesters wanted to wisely use their voting power, they would demand that their districts be ones where they could vote in representatives who improve where they live and reflect their values and stance on the issues, which Democrats clearly aren't doing. That's why the cost of living in the country is at its absolute highest in blue states, because they don't care about lowering costs. They don't care. They only care about adding more taxes, more bullshit. By many reports, the crop of representatives who are protesting against this redistricting currently do not. But I digress. The bottom line, Republicans are finally on offense, and Republican voters are cheering them on. Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt is spot on here. One thing I hope my Republican friends learn from the redistricting battles that also applies to a whole host of issues is that if we fight, we can win. You have to be willing to take the slings and arrows, but in the end, people are clamoring for courage. This is the way. I'm telling you what, man, if the Senate just flips on a dime and they decide to just completely nuke the filibuster, and then they just railroad the Save America Act just right to the president's desk, I think the Republican Party would be pretty well unstoppable for the foreseeable future, because it seems to me that they have just all the logic, the reason, the common sense. Everything is on the right. It's not over on the left. They're lunatics on the left, man. They've absolutely lost their minds on the left. They've gone absolutely brutally insane. It's sad to see. And I've said that so many times. It's ridiculous what they've done to the Democratic Party. It's insane. Let's hope this fellow Republican electeds take note and enact even more plans to storm the gates, because primaries are happening every month up to the November midterms, and we see fighters, not squishes. Indiana showed us this redistricting battle is a winnowing, and every primary from here on out needs to weed out Republicans who refuse to do what their constituents want and make way for those who will. Amen. Democrats are experiencing cognitive dissonance, failing to understand why their TDS-fueled rages are not yielding the results they want. Yet they continue to refuse to face the reality that they did this to themselves, and they continue to lie and gaslight and throw massive baby temper tantrums on top of their desk in the middle of a Senate hearing. It's insane. Exhibit A, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. My colleague, Sister Tolja, made note of his tone-deaf statement. And of course, we read this at the beginning, so I'm not going to read it over again. If you want to pause the video and read it just in the context, you can feel free to do that. Anyway, so in Exhibit B, Governor Gaslight himself, California's Gavin Newsom. No vote in Tennessee, no vote in Florida, Missouri, North Carolina, Texas. Virginia's voter-approved maps thrown out. MAGA has rigged the system. No, well, Democrats already did that in Virginia with their framing of the ballot, says the man who engineered the Prop 50 gerrymandering scam in his state, which is also unconstitutional. Fox White House correspondent Bill Milligan said it best: the redistricting war is turning into a total catastrophe for House Democrats. Republicans need to keep the fire in the belly, and Americans need to keep their feet to the fire to ensure the House and the Senate remain in GOP hands. And not because Republicans are all that, but because Democrats are insane. Yeah, I could not agree more. Just like President Trump said during his State of the Union earlier this year, these people are crazy. because they have gone absolutely crazy, absolutely insane. And speaking of Gavin Newsom, we got Gavin Newsom right here. Confederate states are rushing through rigged maps to erase black districts off the map. If this doesn't make you angry, it should. And of course, this is ultra triggering the Democrats and bringing a lot of satisfaction to those who are Republicans when they take a look at this image. The current map, Democrats hold 24 seats in these states, but the possible redistricting scenario, Republicans gain 12 more seats. There you go. And from Benny Johnson, the CNN panel didn't know what to say when they found out the new congressional seat after Tennessee redistrict will go to a Republican black woman instead of an old white Democrat man. They had to cut to a commercial. Now, I looked this up. There is a black woman who is running for that seat as a Republican, but at least according to Google. And I didn't look that up on Grok. I only looked it up on Google. So, you know, Google's obviously biased to the left, but Google said that she doesn't have a favorable chance of winning, that whoever her opponent is for the Republicans apparently stands to win. So I don't know. Maybe Benny Johnson knows something that actually Google may not know. But anyway, let's watch this from CNN.
The woman now who is likely going to win the 9th district in Tennessee is a black Republican woman as a result of this redistricting effort. It's likely going to be a black Republican woman who beats that old white man.
Could I make this very simple?
But that's racist.
We're going to come back.
It actually is.
We're going to take a quick break, and then Tesla and Congressman, I'm going to have you both respond. We'll be right back.
Oh, man, the way she said that was so defeating. We're going to come right back. Oh, my God, we're going to come back. We can't allow the people watching this to hear the truth, to hear that a black woman, Republican, might actually win that district. Dude, their heads would explode if that actually happens. I hope that happens. That would be unbelievably amazing if that happens. I mean, of course, you know, the Democrats, they're going to call them Uncle Tom, well, a black woman, but, you know, whatever the tropes, the racist tropes that they're going to throw at her, that they typically throw at persons of color who are Republicans. Which I probably couldn't say on YouTube even if I knew all of them. All right, so Matt Vance, brother, this is an actual district in Chicago. Yeah, because that's not racially gerrymandered at all. Yeah, that looks actually absolutely perfectly normal of a district, but that's a district in Chicago. Looks like a freaking like a river system or something. And from The Persistent, who is Scott Pressler, I'm in tears. They told us we wouldn't win Indiana. They told us we couldn't win Virginia. We, together as a family, did win. You got over 78,000 likes for that already. I think he only posted this just a couple hours ago. Or no, it was earlier this year. Earlier today. It was about 11 o'clock this morning. So yeah, Scott Pressler. There's a lot of movement of people in the Republican Party that are trying to push Scott Pressler toward the RNC chair. And like I've said before, I'm not a registered Republican. I never have been. I've been a no party affiliate my whole adult life. And I would say, though, that if there's anybody who would be the best person to lead the RNC, it would be Scott Pressler, hands down. The only thing I'd be worried about is who's going to replace Scott Pressler on the ground. Because that dude, I think that at this point, he has registered hundreds of thousands of Republicans in like, the last 10 years. I think it was like 2016, back in the day when he cleaned up that alleyway behind Baltimore, which really helped him make a name for himself. But anyway, let's move on to Rapid Response 47, President Trump's Truth Social. So this was also a big story that happened today with regard to releasing UFO files, the possibility of extraterrestrials visiting the Earth that a lot of people have been harping on for a long time. Tucker Carlson comes to mind. He's been talking about this like going all the way back to like 2016 or maybe early 2017, like pretty much the beginning of Tucker Carlson Tonight. He brought this up all the time. So anyway, from the president, as for my promise to you, the Department of War has released the first tranche of the UFO/UAP files to the public for their review and study. In an effort for complete and maximum transparency, it was my honor to direct my administration to identify and provide government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, and unidentified flying objects. So one thing that might come to mind are those like little Tic Tac objects that the U.S. Navy kept capturing videos of, going like all the way back to something like 2004, that they had caught these objects on camera and they were following them, and then they would just like blink out of existence because they would suddenly like shift their trajectory and just like make some crazy right-hand turn that was impossible for them to do. So I'm sure that's all included in all of this. Whereas previous administrations have failed to be transparent on this subject, with these new documents and videos, the people can decide for themselves what the hell is going on. Have fun and enjoy. President Donald J. Trump. Even Chuck Schumer was thankful for these files getting released. Of course, he didn't thank Donald Trump. He didn't thank the president for it. And I don't think that I have that included in this list of bookmarks. I just saw that just in passing today. From the White House, presidential unsealing for UAP encounters. You know what? They use the acronym UAP a lot in these next few posts. I'm just going to say UFOs because that's really what it is. Per President Trump's directive, the Department of War has declassified and released unresolved UFO records. This is an unprecedented level of transparency. No other administration has gone this far. Files are now live on war.gov/UFO. Additional files will be released by the Department of War on a rolling basis. I could only imagine how long it would take to go through all of this, so I didn't set aside time to go through this. This is my first time actually visiting this website, so I'm not really sure exactly what all is in here. Well, I mean, the entirety of the first tranche of files is located right here, which you can find in the description, or you can just use your memory and just go to war.gov/UFO. That'll take you there. Based on the tremendous interest shown, this is from President Trump, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, and unidentified flying objects, and any and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. God bless America. Is the AM radio show Coast to Coast, is that still a thing? I don't know, like George Norrie. I used to listen to him like back in the 2000s when I used to work third shift. It was a fascinating show to listen to. If that show is still in existence, I bet they're doing backflips right now. They are set for months if there's enough information to comb through. In response to President Donald Trump's directive for transparency on U.S. government information regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, the Department of War, with support from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which we're going to get to in a minute with Tulsi Gabbard, is overseeing government-wide efforts to expeditiously find, review, identify, declassify, and publicly release unresolved UAP-related records and historical documents in the federal government's possession. This is an unprecedented historic undertaking that requires coordination between dozens of agencies and the reviews of tens of millions of records, many existing only on paper, spanning many decades. Given the scope of this task, the Department of War will be releasing new materials on a rolling basis as they are discovered and declassified, with tranches posted every few weeks. The materials archived here are unresolved cases, meaning the government is unable to make a definitive determination on the nature of the observed phenomena. This can occur for a variety of reasons, including a lack of sufficient data, and the Department of War welcomes the application of private sector analysis, information, and expertise. Well, they should have been welcoming that since day one. The DOW will continue to conduct separate reporting on resolved UAP cases as mandated by statute. Under this administration, we will pursue the truth and share our findings with the American people. Incredible. So that's the directive. Cleared for release May 8th, 2026. The Department of War is in lockstep with President Trump to bring unprecedented transparency regarding our government's understanding of unidentified anomalous phenomena. These files, hidden behind classifications, have long fueled justified speculation, and it's time the American people see it for themselves. This release of declassified documents demonstrates the Trump administration's earnest commitment to unprecedented transparency. The United States Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. So yeah, the federal government, they're releasing all their UFO files they have, or at least the ones that they're going to allow us to see. Maybe they're not going to release literally everything, but of course, I would imagine the Trump administration is going to say that it's everything. But is it really everything? I don't know, maybe. Look, if a lot of stuff has like CIA letterhead on it, then okay, maybe I might be a little more believing, even though I don't even know if the CIA has anything to do with UFO stuff. It probably does, but I don't know. So these are the documents, the tranche. And it's all going to be found here. Looks like 17 pages worth. And I can imagine each one of these links is probably very heavy with information. So it looks like this is the last one. A PDF. Orbs, launching orbs. Okay. And does it have a page number? Let's see. Release date. Okay, the release date's today. That actually just looks like a single page. But anyway, like I said, I don't want to go into like extreme detail and start digging through all this stuff. But they've got it all downloadable by PDF, and they've got the department where it came from, the Department of State, and there's the FBI. So they've got different agencies where they've got these documents coming from. So it's going to be wild, man, to see what they come up with. Here it is. DNI Tulsi Gabbard. The American people have long sought transparency about the government's knowledge of unidentified aerial phenomena. Under President Trump's leadership, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is actively coordinating on the intelligence community's declassification efforts with the Department of War to ensure a careful, comprehensive, and unprecedented review of our holdings to provide the American people with maximum transparency. Today's release is the first in what will be an ongoing joint declassification and release effort. And this is an article posted by the Department of War, and I'm just seeing if it's got, like, will it? Yeah, okay, yeah, so this is worth reading. Looks like it's got statements from NASA and other administration officials. All right, so today the Department of War announced the initial release of new, never-before-seen files on an unidentified anomalous phenomena as part of the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, or PERSU. This interagency effort includes the White House, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Energy, the DOW's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and additional components of U.S. intelligence agencies. The collection will be housed on war.gov/UFO, and additional files will be released by the Department of War on a rolling basis. This release follows the direction of President Donald J. Trump to begin the process of identifying and declassifying government files related to UAP in the interest of global transparency. No other president or administration in history has followed through on this level of UAP transparency. And I'll link that in the description. The American people can now access the federal government's declassified UAP files instantly. The latest UAP videos, photos, and original source documents from across the entire United States government are all in one place. No clearance required. While past administrations sought to discredit or dissuade the American people, President Trump is focused on providing maximum transparency to the public, who can ultimately make up their own minds about the information contained in these files. The American people have asked for more transparency on these topics that President Trump is delivering. While all of the files have been reviewed for security purposes, many of the materials have not yet been analyzed for resolution of any anomalies. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the Department of War is in lockstep with President Trump to bring unprecedented transparency regarding our government's understanding of unidentified anomalous phenomena. These files, hidden behind classifications, have long fueled justified speculation, and it's time the American people see it for themselves. This release of declassified documents demonstrates the Trump administration's earnest commitment to unprecedented transparency. And DNI Tulsi Gabbard, we already read. FBI Director Kash Patel, the FBI is proud to stand alongside President Trump and our interagency partners in this landmark release of UAP records. For the first time in history, the American people have unfettered access to declassified government files on unidentified anomalous phenomenon, a level of transparency that no prior administration has delivered. The FBI remains committed to supporting this rolling declassification effort with the same rigor and integrity we bring to every national security matter. As these files continue to be reviewed and released, the American people can be confident that their security remains our highest priority. And NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, I applaud President Trump's whole of government effort to bring greater transparency to the American people on unidentified anomalous phenomena at NASA. Our job is to bring the brightest minds and the most advanced scientific instruments to bear, follow the data, and share what we learn. We will remain candid about what we know to be true, what we have yet to understand, and all that remains to be discovered. Exploration and the pursuit of knowledge are core to NASA's mission as we endeavor to unlock the secrets of the universe. War.gov/UFO is the dedicated Department of War webpage to stay up to date with the latest UAP file releases. 21 million views from 8:13 this morning, Friday, May 8th, 2026. A lot of people are getting eyes on that article. So, a lot of curiosity. This is from Sean Parnell, and it looks like it's... Okay, so this is a link to one of the sources in that war.gov/UFO website, and that's where it is here. But let's have a look at it here. I doubt there's sound. I'm sure there's no sound. Let's see what this is all about. Okay, it doesn't move. I thought I was going to like suddenly like make some crazy turn or something. All right. Well, anyway, he's just sharing one example of probably dozens, if not hundreds, of video clips. Okay, and we did get that from FBI Director Kash Patel. Just double checking. Yeah, it looks like we already read that. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth we read. And Brett Shumit So, all right, so we're going to move on past the UFO stuff. So crazy news. They're declassifying UFO documents. Tranches are going to be released every few weeks. So that's something to keep an eye on, especially if somebody just reveals something absolutely spectacularly crazy. I'll be looking out for it. And we're going to move on to the next topic. Brett Schumett says, today is D-Day at the Justice Department. We are denaturalizing 12 criminals for immigration fraud as part of DAG Todd Blanche's surge, the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Criminals who obtain U.S. citizenship through fraud will have it revoked. The U.S. Department of Justice today, the Justice Department filed denaturalization actions in various U.S. district courts against 12 individuals accused of serious offenses, including providing material support to a terrorist group, committing war crimes, and sexually abusing a minor. The Trump administration is taking action to correct these egregious violations of our immigration system. Those who intentionally concealed their criminal histories or misrepresented themselves during the naturalization process will face the fullest extent of the law. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. You can read more at justice.gov. And let's see if it brings it up. And it did. There we go. Justice Department moves to denaturalize 12 individuals for concealing terrorist support, war crimes, espionage, and abuse, and more. The Department of Justice announced today, okay, so we got the intro. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, a naturalized U.S. citizen's citizenship may be revoked and certificate of naturalization canceled if the naturalization was illegally procured or procured by concealment of a material fact or by willful misrepresentation. Individuals implicated in committing fraud or heinous crimes such as abuse or expressing support for terrorism should never have been naturalized as United States citizens, said Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. The Trump administration is taking action to correct these egregious violations of our immigration system. Those who intentionally concealed their criminal histories or misrepresented themselves during the naturalization process will face the fullest extent of the law. This Department of Justice continues to file denaturalization actions at record speeds to restore integrity in our naturalization process, says Assistant Attorney General Brett A. Schumett of the Justice Department Civil Division. The disturbing criminal histories confirm these individuals should have never received the privilege of U.S. citizenship. We remain committed to leveraging every tool available under the law to pursue those who obtain their U.S. citizenship unlawfully. And, of course, they've got the 12 individuals. We're not going to go through all the details, but they do have the countries that they came from. This dude came from Iraq. He's age 48, 75 from Colombia. Oh, and see, look, I think these actually open up. Yeah, this opens up to even more information about him. Oh, so there you go. Like this is the complaint to revoke naturalization. So you can go read through all the court documents and stuff if you want, which this is going to be linked below. Age 48 from Morocco, age 43 from Somalia, age 58 from Gambia, age 31 from Bolivia, age 46 from Uzbekistan, and age 28 from Kenya, age 62 from India, 53 from China, 66 from Nigeria, and Colombia, age 75. A bunch of old dudes. Kind of weird, but all right. And they're all from different countries. You didn't get two from the same country. So, we got a whole variety of people that are breaking federal law, and they are getting denaturalized. So there you have it. Let's see what it says. Those who intentionally conceal their criminal histories or misrepresented themselves during the naturalization process will face the fullest extent of the law. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. And here we go. To the next. Nope. One more. To the next. USCIS Director Joseph B. Edlow. He says when it comes to immigration, we're upholding standards set by Congress and enforcing requirements that have long been ignored. The Trump administration is taking decisive steps to eliminate fraud and protect American citizens. So let's see, the official ex-account of USCIS Director Joseph B. Edlow. All right, so anyway, let's take a look at this video. It's really short.
We need to make sure that people are accurate and telling the truth when it comes to what they're putting down, and that we're holding them to these standards that Congress has always intended us to do and frankly has never been done.
There you go. Short and to the point from Just the News. Rock and roll. From Homeland Security. Nice city. It's like Miami Vice, but Miami Ice, you get it. Ha ha. All right, let's have a look. Oh yeah, this definitely smells and sounds like copyright. I've never seen Miami Vice. I had to get that. Probably pretty good. Good grief. Department of Homeland Security. Nice city. Like Vice City. Nice city. All right. And let's rock and roll. Taylor Van Kirk, who works at the White House, the communications director to the Vice President J.D. Vance. So in the executive, J.D. Vance's task force whole of government crusade against fraud continues. We got another article from Breitbart, man. A lot of reading tonight. J.D. Vance task force whole of government crusade against fraud continues. So assuming this is going to give some outlines to what they're up to currently. The Vice President, J.D. Vance-led task force to eliminate fraud with the whole of government approach continues its efforts to combat fraud, with numerous agencies announcing major developments in recent weeks. The anti-fraud task force hit the ground running in its first 5 weeks after President Donald Trump established it on March 16th. And most recently, various agencies, including the Small Business Administration, the Department of Education, the Department of Agriculture, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, have furthered the task force's mission to tackle fraud. Quote, the vice president has brought the entire Trump administration together to root out fraud and return hard-earned tax dollars to the American people where it belongs, a Vance spokesperson told Breitbart. The task force continues to gain momentum every single day, and it's working tirelessly to deliver results on the president's war on fraud. On April 24th, the SBA flagged tens of billions of dollars in suspected pandemic-era fraud to the Treasury Department. That was crazy to see. An incredibly huge number. After extensive review and with the strong support of the White House Anti-Fraud Task Force, we are taking our most decisive action yet to end a Biden-era scheme that protected over 560,000 borrowers tied to more than $22 billion in suspected pandemic-era fraud. SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler told the outlet, PPP, those PPP loans that were super easy to take out, apparently, that you could fill out this form online. You could just make up whatever business name you wanted to make up and say, yeah, this is my small business. I employ like 2 people. Can I have a $20,000 loan, please? And they just like send it to you like almost immediately. It's crazy. Last week, SBA sent over 560,000 PPP and EIDL borrowers to Treasury for collections on $22 billion in delinquent and suspected fraudulent loans, the largest debt referral in agency history. And as I've said before, a lot of people, they were already arrested and convicted, and they're in prison right now for PPP fraud, for COVID-era small business loan fraud. And a lot of those people got like 5-10 years. They got a lot of time. Even some who didn't have a criminal history. I mean, they nailed a lot of people. The White House Anti-Fraud Task Force is moving at Trump speed to hold fraudsters accountable, I'm assuming. But anyway, let's get back to the article. The borrowers received the loans through the COVID Economy Injury Disaster Loan, EIDL program, and the Paycheck Protection Program. And the referral was the largest debt referral in agency history, Loeffler said in a post on X. Okay, so maybe the small businesses that were, or the people that said that they had small businesses when they actually didn't, it might have been the EIDL loans that they were getting, because Paycheck Protection, I suppose it could have been either one. I'm pretty sure a lot of them were still with the PPP. This is a huge win by Loeffler and the SBA to recoup potentially fraudulent dollars that went largely ignored under the Biden administration. Cutting through the bureaucracy is part of the great work our task force continues to produce, Vance wrote in a post on X. And what else do we got? On April 27th, the Department of Education and the task force took action to safeguard the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, against fraud by implementing a fraud detection tool. And in a post on X, Education Secretary Linda McMahon emphasized that the Education Department dispersed more than $100 billion in student aid per year. But how much of it was fraud? Starting today, in partnership with the Vice President's task force to eliminate fraud, fraud detection is built directly into FAFSA, screening every applicant in real time. But how much? Okay, so we just now read that. The next day, the Department of Justice and Agriculture took separate, unrelated actions to further the federal government's crackdown on fraud. The DOJ, in tandem with Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, served warrants for 22 businesses in Minnesota, including the Quality Leering Center, that are under investigation for suspected fraud, as Fox noted. And let's see, the task force and the DOJ will be relentless in exposing these fraudsters wherever they may be hiding. And the DOJ confirms to Fox that FBI and HSI are raiding 20-plus locations in Minneapolis. That was on April 28th. The task force and the DOJ, okay, we read that, HSI, in cooperation with its federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, engaged in court-authorized law enforcement operations in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. For reasons of operational security and for the safety of our agents, we will not comment further at this time. I remember reading that exact post right here on the Swamp. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins announced the same day that more than 10,000 individuals in a single state receiving Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, benefits are driving luxury vehicles, including Bentleys, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis. These individuals are taking advantage of the American taxpayer, and together with Vance's task force to eliminate fraud, this ends now. And she listed the vehicles: 3 Bentleys, 3 Ferraris, 11 Lamborghinis, 59 Maseratis, 141 Porsches, 244 Alfa Romeos, 306 Land Rovers, and over 2,000 Teslas, all of whom are getting food stamps. And this is just in one state. Yeah, that's, definitely got to reiterate that. Like, all these vehicles, that's only one state where all these people have all these vehicles. 4.3 million Americans have been moved off of SNAP, but more work needs to be done. Vance emphasized that SNAP benefits should go to Americans who need help buying food, not by fraudsters with enough cash to buy Bentleys and Ferraris. And CMS Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz revealed on April 30th that the agency is deferring another $91 million in federal Medicaid funding for Minnesota. This builds upon the $250 million in Medicaid deferments to Minnesota that Dr. Oz and I announced at the very beginning of our war on fraud efforts. Proud of the work our task force and CMS continue to do. And, all right, so Oz said, here's the issue. Minnesota state-run programs have raised serious red flags, from the so-called Leering Center scandal to a recent Department of Justice raid tied to child care building concerns. And don't forget how fraud tourists from other states took advantage of Minnesota's weak enforcement to allegedly use AI to fabricate records and steal another $3.5 million. Vance noted that the latest deferment comes after $250 million in Medicaid deferments to Minnesota. Proud of the work our task force and CMS continues to do. On April 30th, the DOJ announced the launch of the West Coast Healthcare Fraud Strike Force, which will lead the charge against fraud schemes in Northern California, Arizona, and Nevada. Colin McDonald, the Assistant Secretary General for the DOJ's Fraud Division, said, driven by data showing a significant and accelerating increase in healthcare fraud across all 3 districts, the strike force builds on a foundation of recent landmark prosecutions, including the successful prosecution of digital health technology executives in the Northern District of California and dismantling of Medicaid, sober home, and wound care fraud schemes in the District of Arizona. So if you watch The Swamp every day, then you already know, like, we've gone through all of these. I believe I've read every single one of these in the last several weeks. Moreover, earlier this week, Vance announced that the task force will probe allegations of $66 million in Ohio Medicaid fraud brought to light by a Daily Wire investigation. These shocking allegations, if true, show why the fraud task force's work is so important. I'm directing the task force to look into it and take immediate action to prosecute any fraudsters involved and stop all further payments as appropriate. And finally, the last part looks like a quote from President Vance, or Vice President Vance, maybe one day President Vance. These shocking allegations, if true, show why the fraud task force's work is so important. I'm directing the task force to look into it and take immediate action to prosecute. All right, so I think I already read that. Any fraudsters involved and stop all the further payments as appropriate. Anyway, that's the end of the article. So just a quick rundown on everything that the fraud task force has been up to. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that's going to come out of it. The FBI director, Kash Patel, FBI arrested 276 subjects, freed thousands of trafficked workers, and shut down multiple scam centers worth billions of dollars tied to cryptocurrency fraud. Networks who targeted Americans and drained millions of dollars from victims. Brilliant work from the FBI in San Diego and our MPS and UAE partners who coordinated. I don't think this is new news. I think that he already discussed this a few days ago. So, global scam crackdown leads to 276 arrests. The FBI and the DOJ. We've often warned you about romance scams and crypto investment opportunities that feel too good to pass up. Now there's a major update that shows just how organized these operations have become. The DOJ and Federal Bureau of Investigation announced a sweeping international operation that led to at least 276 arrests and the shutdown of multiple scam centers tied to cryptocurrency fraud. These networks targeted Americans and drained millions of dollars from victims. I thought it was billions. The operation spanned continents and involved coordinated efforts by law enforcement and tech companies. And let's see. So how the cryptocurrency scam crackdown unfolded. Authorities worked with partners around the world, including the Dubai police and law enforcement agencies in Thailand and beyond. Together, they dismantled at least 9 scam centers linked to large-scale crypto fraud. Several suspects now face federal charges in the United States, including wire fraud and money laundering. Investigators say these operations functioned like businesses with recruitment, with management layers, and structured systems designed to deceive victims. Officials made it clear that this effort sends a message: fraud crosses borders, and enforcement is now doing the same. How crypto investment scams target the victims, known as pig butchering. It's the slow, calculated tactic that builds trust before any money is involved. So they pretend to be your friend. Sometimes they pretend to be a celebrity. And you'd be surprised, man. A lot of people they really get suckered into this stuff. How Meta Platforms Incorporated help track scam networks. So I'm assuming this would be Facebook, right? Played a key role in the investigation by providing data that helped law enforcement identify and track these networks. The company says it's taken aggressive action again across its platforms. In 2025 alone, Meta removed more than 159 million scam ads and shut down 10.9 million accounts linked to scam centers. More recently, it disabled over 150,000 accounts connected to these networks as part of a coordinated enforcement effort. And that's a statement from Meta. New tools to stop cryptocurrency scams in real time. Meta's rolling out new protections across its apps to help users spot scams before they get pulled in. And why this cryptocurrency scam crackdown matters? Well, it matters because, you don't want to get suckered into giving them your money. Ways to stay safe from cryptocurrency scams: slow down unexpected connections. Also, verify your investment platforms before sending any money. Avoid sending crypto to unknown people. And watch for pressure and urgency. Also, use strong antivirus protection. In other words, don't trust anybody. Limit your personal data exposure. Yeah, that's very important, especially on a place like Facebook, because, they could do deep fake stuff right now with generative AI. They could create a voice that sounds extremely similar to one of your relatives, and they can pull your personal information that you compile on your Facebook profile, especially if you don't have it locked down, and they can build an AI profile of a relative, because you know how they do it on Facebook. You connect with all your relatives, and you click on somebody's profile, and you can view the list of all the people they're related to. So they've gotten pretty sophisticated using AI. Limit your personal data exposure. Also strengthen your account security. Report scams as soon as possible. And then they go over like some takeaways and things like that. So that'll be linked, of course. Moving on to Tracy Mann. Another month of our economy surpassing job report estimates. This came out also today. Thanks to the president and House GOP's tax cuts last year, small businesses are investing capital in fueling job growth. And from CNN, the jobs reports are passing the expectation this morning. And we've got a couple of quotes, so we'll just hear from them.
The jobs report surpassing the expectation this morning. New data showing 115,000 jobs were added last month. All right, CNN's Matt Egan joining us now. Put this into perspective for us.
Well, Sarah, look, the job market, it slowed down in April, but not nearly as much as feared. This was a big beat for the job market. Look at this. So the U.S. economy adding 115,000 jobs in April. That's almost twice as much as the consensus from economists. Again, it is a slowdown from March, which was actually revised slightly higher, but this was better than expected.
Yeah, March, I believe that the March numbers were also, I don't think it was slightly, I thought it was significantly higher than what they forecasted it. So March was good, April's good, maybe May might also turn out to be really good. From Speaker Mike Johnson, April jobs report crushed expectations. Thanks to the working families tax cuts, businesses can invest, grow, hire, while workers keep more of what they earn. You know, typical political response. Congressional Republicans and the president are delivering real results for hardworking Americans. Every Democrat opposed this. Yes, they did. Fox Business, we got a much better than expected jobs report for the month of April. Let's hear from Fox Business.
We got a much better than expected jobs report for the month of April. 115,000 jobs is the non-farm number. 115,000 jobs. The expectation was 62,000. Again, a strong print for the U.S. jobs picture. The unemployment rate, as expected, holding steady, 4.3%.
All right, 4.3% unemployment. So that sounds good. I mean, it could be worse. It could be a lot worse. And another one, this is on CNBC. These are good jobs numbers.
The big jobs report for April. 65,000 expected. Nay, nay, nay. We are much stronger. 115,000. 115. And last month, upward revision from 178 to 185. These are good numbers. The big jobs
good
report.
Numbers, revised up. So yeah, it was revised up to 180 something back in the previous month. And from Kelly Loeffler, another blockbuster jobs report for the month of April, with 115,000 jobs added to the economy, largely led by small business expansion. And she's the small business administrator, by the way, Kelly Loeffler. Confident job creators invest in new employees. That is exactly and undeniably what's happening now, thanks to the massive tax cuts and deregulation of the president. So I'm not going to go into detail with this article. I know I've already read a bunch of articles already, but the U.S. economy added 115,000 jobs in April. And the U.S. economy added jobs at a modest pace in April amid uncertainty surrounding the impact of conflict in the Middle East on the labor market. Key findings, which of course we know it's 115,000. The LSEG, or LSEG, predicted a gain of 62,000. So, yeah, absolutely shattered that expectation. The unemployment rate steady at 4.3%, and the revisions down by 23,000 from a loss. That was back in February. February revised down by 23,000 from a loss of 133,000 to a decline of 156, while March's report was revised up by 7,000 for a gain of up to 185,000. And we've got the chart showing going all the way back to January of 2021. Of course, we all know the COVID era, it really jacked up a lot of things, because then there was like the Great Resignation, and then I think like, what was it, like the Great Rehiring or whatever it was. So like the numbers are kind of all over the place around, the fallout of COVID. And the most recent, April, of course, 2026. And the sectors that added or lost the most jobs in April, let's see, private payrolls added 123,000 in April. And the prediction from LSEG was 75,000. March, 186. Of course, we already went through all that. Manufacturing. Okay, so government payrolls contracted by 8,000 jobs in April. The government's workforce shed 9,000 jobs for the month. And the manufacturing sector shed 2,000 jobs in April. As economists polled by LSEG had expected a gain of 5,000 jobs. I can imagine manufacturing's got to really take off over the next couple of years because of the $18 trillion that are being invested into the United States. A lot of it going to manufacturing. Healthcare employment grew by over 37,300 jobs in April. So an average monthly gain of 32,000 over the prior 12 months. So healthcare, man, healthcare's booming. Construction added 9,000 jobs in April. And here's a prediction by Kalshi as to how high the unemployment rate will get in 2026. Looks like, like as of May 8th, I guess the forecast is 3.7%, but the number they gave was over 4%. But, there you go. Transportation added 30,300 jobs. So that's good to see, because I know in the transportation sector, they're trying to move as close to automation as they can get. Even Uber and, of course, Waymo. Waymo's already self-driving. And I believe that Uber, that they are trying to work that into their system to try to get self-driving vehicles so they don't have to pay the drivers. They could just make all the profits and not have to pay drivers. That's probably still a ways away, but one thing's for sure is that Uber, they've got a lot of money to put toward those initiatives. I'm sure Lyft they probably have crazy amounts of money too. Retail, 21,800 jobs in April. And social assistance added 16,600 jobs, led by gains in individual and family services of 24,000. And anyway, so I'll have this linked if you want to take a look at all the other details of it. Like the bottom line is that we got job growth, which is a good thing. President Trump announces a 3-day ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine beginning on May the 9th, marking a historic pause in the war as Victory Day commemorations begin. I'm pleased to announce that there will be a 3-day ceasefire May 9th, 10th, and 11th in the war between Russia and Ukraine. The celebration in Russia is for Victory Day, but likewise in Ukraine because they were also a big part and factor of World War II. The ceasefire will include a suspension of all kinetic activity and also a prison swap of 1,000 prisoners from each country. This request was made directly by President Trump, and I very much appreciate its agreement by President Vladimir Putin and President Volodymyr Zelensky. Hopefully, it is the beginning of the end of a very long, deadly, and hard-fought war. Talks are continuing on ending this major conflict, the biggest since World War II, and we are getting closer and closer every day. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And from House Republicans, on May 8th of 1945, the guns fell silent in Europe. Today, we remember the millions of Americans who fought, sacrificed, and won the cause of freedom. V-Day. There you go, man. May 8th, 1945. And from Bob Onder, Rep. Bob Onder. Military spouses deserve to be honored not only today, but every day, which, by the way, today is Military Spouse Appreciation Day. And he goes on to say, I have spoken with military families whose husband or wife missed their child's first steps, graduations, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, and other meaningful milestones while serving our nation and protecting the American people. These sacrifices are profound. They weigh heavily on children, parents, and entire families. Yet through every challenge and hardship, military spouses continue to demonstrate extraordinary strength and resilience. We are deeply grateful for your courage, your commitment, and the steadfast support you provide to the men and women who defend our nation and keep America safe. Military Spouse Appreciation Day. Show your appreciation to the military spouses, although that's probably a little too late for it now because usually I don't drop this video until damn near midnight. And from U.S. Central Command, the U.S. disables 2 more vessels violating the blockade in the Gulf of Oman. U.S. forces disabled MT Sea Star number 3, the 3rd, and MT Sevda May 8th prior to both vessels entering an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman in violation of the ongoing U.S. blockade. U.S. Central Command enforced blockade measures against 2 Iranian-flagged unladen oil tankers attempting to pull into an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman. A U.S. Navy FA-18 Super Hornet from USS George H.W. Bush, CVN-77, disabled both tankers after firing precision munitions into their smokestacks, preventing the non-compliant ships from entering Iran. U.S. forces also disabled Iranian-flagged MT Hasna on May 6th. As it attempted to sail to an Iranian port in the Gulf of Oman, which I believe that we covered that right here on the swamp. An FA-18 Super Hornet from USS Abraham Lincoln disabled the unladen oil tanker's rudder by firing several rounds from a 20mm cannon gun. Yeah, I definitely covered that. All 3 vessels are no longer transiting to Iran. U.S. forces in the Middle East remain committed to full enforcement of the blockade of vessels entering or leaving Iran, said Admiral Brad Cooper from CENTCOM. Our highly trained men and women in uniform are doing incredible work. Multiple commercial vessels have been disabled and more than 50 have been redirected by CENTCOM forces to ensure compliance. Oh, they're going to show a video of this? That's unlike them. They don't usually show the videos like Southern Command. We get videos from Southern Command almost on a daily basis with them blowing the narco terrorists out of the water. Well, let's see what they show here. All right, I saw a little plume of smoke. Okay, yeah. So that's a smokestack, apparently. Well, alrighty. Holy shit. Yeah, that probably took him out. Probably not going to be going anywhere now. Well, you know, that's what they get. They FAFO'd. They told them to abide by the blockade, and they decided not to, so now they've got a very expensive ship that they're going to have to fix somehow. And moving on to U.S. Central Command, just another one from them. The photos of USS Truxton, DDG-103, and USS Rafael Peralta, DDG-115, and USS Mason, DDG-87, operating in the Middle East. The 3 destroyers are currently sailing in the Arabian Sea, supporting the blockade against Iran. As of today, CENTCOM forces have redirected 57 commercial vessels and disabled 4 to prevent the ships from entering or leaving Iranian ports. So let's take a look at these 3 ships. With no sound. I don't know why they don't put sound here. I'll turn this up. There you go. Ooh, very pretty. Awesome vessels. Unstoppable. American might. Right there in the background. All right. Cool beans. All right. And let's head to the next. From the Department of State, we're going to get some highlights from Secretary Marco Rubio. I believe he's still in the Vatican. He's still in Italy, and he gives a statement to the press, answers some questions, so we'll get a few highlights from that. Secretary Rubio, the president is always going to do what's in the best interest of the United States. I think we can do that and also continue to have a productive and fruitful relationship with the church because it plays an important role in the world as well.
Why would I tell you what I'm going to recommend to the president? But beyond that, the president will always speak clearly about how he feels about the U.S. and U.S. policy. The president of the United States is always going to act in what's in the best interest of the United States. I think we can do that and continue to also have a very productive and fruitful and important relationship with the church because it plays an important role in the world as well. Why would I tell you what I'm going to...
All right, man, that's one. Let's go to the next one. Secretary Rubio, only stupid countries don't shoot back when you're shot at. And we're not a stupid country. The red line is clear. If Iranian boats threaten Americans, they're going to get blown up. And he's talking about 3 of our ships that were transiting through, I'm assuming it was the Strait of Hormuz. It was in the general area, and Iran started firing a bunch of shit at it. They sent drones and surface-to-air missiles, and they didn't hit any of our ships, any of the three. They also sent some of those like little rink-a-dink speedboats out there to try to assault our warships, and we blew up like everything that came at us, and they didn't hit us a single friggin' time. So here we go with Secretary Rubio.
The point is, if there's not much seizing in the firing, because we've
well, you should ask that of the Iranians. Don't ask me. We didn't fire. They fired on us. My point is, if you fire at a U.S. Navy ship, what are we supposed to do? Say, oh, there's a ceasefire. We're not going to shoot down your drone. That's a stupid question. That's a stupid position to take.
Yeah, they violated the ceasefire, not us.
Back at them. They were shooting at us. That's what I would expect to do. Only stupid countries don't shoot back when you're shot at, and we're not a stupid country.
Do you expect
no,
that,
we're not.
Or have you conveyed any red lines to Iran where, you know, if the ceasefire or whatever you call it, if they cross...
Well, the red line is clear. If they threaten Americans, they're going to get blown up. I mean, that's
yeah.
How much clearer can you be than that? If you fire on, if you are a missile launching guy, whatever they call that job, and you're sitting there and you fire a missile at the United States and we saw you fire it, we're going to hit you. Of course we are.
You'll be dead.
Who doesn't do that? Unless you want to get your ship sunk. I mean, we're not going to let our ships get sunk by the Iranians with their little, you know, their drones that they're firing.
It's taxpayer money.
You know, they don't have a navy anymore, but they bring out these little Boston whaler fishing boats and they try to swarm you. We're going to blow those boats up if they're coming towards our boats. I don't know if that's a red line, but I hope they know it is by now. So if I were one of these Iranians on a fast boat and they tell you, hey, your mission is to go after a U.S. destroyer, you're probably not going to survive. I think that's a red line.
Yeah. So in other words, next question. It's kind of a stupid question, even though there's not supposed to be such thing as a stupid question, but I think there is. Secretary Rubio or every American president has said Iran can have a nuclear weapon. Here we go again. President Trump is the first American president that's actually trying to do something concrete about it. I don't know who would disagree with that.
I mean, I don't know. I think everybody agrees that Iran having a nuclear weapon is unacceptable. I mean, I don't know of anyone who thinks it's a good idea for Iran to have a nuclear weapon except the Ayatollah. So I think the question is, what do you do about it? And the president's actually trying to do something about it. And so, I mean, that's... I don't know what I don't think there's any disagreement that they can't have a nuclear weapon. I think the question is, what do you do about it? And, you know, we've had every American president says, oh, they can't have a nuclear weapon. This is the first American president that's actually trying to do something concrete about it. I don't know who would disagree with that. I mean,
yeah, because according to the Trump administration, they were roughly 3 months away from being able to fully develop one. I guess they were at a critical point where they were enriching uranium, I guess. From the Department of State Secretary Rubio, every country needs to ask themselves if they are going to normalize a country claiming to control an international waterway. If the answer is no, then they'd better have something more than strongly worded statements to back it up.
But the fundamental question every country, not Italy, every country needs to ask themselves is, are you going to normalize a country claiming to control an international waterway? Because if you normalize that, you've set a precedent that's going to get repeated in a dozen other places. And if the answer is no, we don't want to normalize it, then you better have something more than just strongly worded statements to back it up. And that's the point I've made in all of my visits, not just here. I didn't come to Italy just to make that point. I would say that to any country that complains about the Straits, because that's what we potentially are facing unless we get a good deal from the Iranians. And we're waiting to hear that today.
Well, yeah, but regardless, I mean, we're not going to let them set up tolls just to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And another one, we have a UN resolution which the world would have the opportunity to vote and say that they're not going to allow Iran to control the strait. If a country decides to veto, then you know what the impediment is.
And we're trying to do something about it diplomatically. We have a resolution at the United Nations that we're trying to move forward, in which the world and the UN will have an opportunity through the Security Council to vote and say, we are not going to allow them to mine the straits, we're not going to allow them to try to control the straits, and by the way, you have a bunch of humanitarian aid that's trapped inside the Persian Gulf and needs to be released and has not been able to move. We're going to give the world a chance to pronounce itself on it. And if Russia or China or some other country decide to veto it, then you know what the impediment is.
All right. Well, and sounds like that might end up being the case. Might get a few vetoes from the BRICS nations. We are not putting sanctions on the Cuban people. We are putting sanctions on the company that is stealing from the Cuban people to the benefit of a few regime insiders. We're going to be imposing more, by the way.
I don't know if you know this. There's the Cuban government, and they have a budget. And then there's this private company that has more money than the government does. None of the money in that company goes to build a single road, a single bridge, provide a single grain of rice to a single Cuban, other than the people that are part of Gaesa. So that's what we're sanctioning, is a company that basically is taking anything that makes money in Cuba and illegally putting it into the pockets of a few regime insiders. So that's not sanctions on the Cuban people, because the Cuban people don't benefit from Gaesa. It's a sanction against this company that is stealing from the Cuban people to the benefit of a few. And we didn't discuss those sanctions yesterday, but we imposed them yesterday, and we're going to be doing more, by the way.
That is crazy that there is a company in Cuba that has more money than the entirety of the Cuban government. And, you know, like if Democrats got their way and if they were to roll communism across America, it would probably be quite similar. There would be this company that would have a massive amount of money that would entail or would comprise more money than the entirety of the U.S. federal government. And I have a feeling the name of the company would probably be the Democratic Party Incorporated. U.S. Southern Command on May 8th at the direction of Southcom, Commander General Francis L. Donovan, Joint Task Force Southern Spear conducted a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel operated by designated terrorist organizations. Intelligence confirmed the vessel was transiting along known narco-trafficking routes in the Eastern Pacific. It was engaged in narco-trafficking operations. 2 male narco-terrorists were killed during this action, and 1 survived the strike. Got a survivor. Following the engagement, U.S. Southcom immediately notified the U.S. Coast Guard to activate the search and rescue system for the survivor. No U.S. military forces were harmed. So there you go. It's the explosion, and they ended up pulling the survivor out of the water, the Coast Guard. And I'm still not exactly sure what the Coast Guard does. I don't know if I'm assuming that they turn him over to U.S. authorities, though I don't know exactly who that might be. Assuming they probably put him in some sort of detention or what have you. Moving on to the U.S. Coast Guard. Speak of the devil, but not really. U.S. Coast Guard ice-breaking operations have concluded after a severe 2025-26 winter season. Yeah, dude, it was a rough winter. I mean, just like I live in the middle part of Florida on the West Coast, and we got, I think we got frost 3 separate times. And the last time that I saw frost was in 2009, and that was only one day. Like one morning we had frost. And this year we had three separate days we had frost. It was crazy. 6,900 hours, 30 plus cutters, nearly 1,000 vessels supported. A robust domestic icebreaker fleet has never been more critical. Energy security, strategic mobility, and waterways kept open. It mattered most, or when it mattered most. Read more here. So they got the press release article, but they've also got this video clip. It's short. All right. Well, they could have done without the freaking graphic covering up everything. Would have been a little nicer to see exactly what we were looking at. Okay. From NCSC, Director Wes Street, serving as the director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center under the leadership of the president and DNI Tulsi Gabbard. Florida sits on the front lines of the counterintelligence fight with 21 military bases and 3 combatant commands and the world's busiest space port hub. Collaboration across federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, and private sector partners is essential to counter foreign adversaries targeting the American people. Thank you to Chairman Rep. Rick Crawford, Greg Stubbe, Rep. Kat Kamak, and Rep. Kathy Castor for leading this week's critical discussion on modernizing and unifying the counterintelligence mission alongside partners from the CISA, FBI, FBI Tampa, Secret Service, the DHS, the INA, and the U.S. Coast Guard. And don't have any videos, we just have a couple of just photos. So talking security, cybersecurity in the state of Florida. And from Senator Dick Durbin, so he might be the subject of a massive lawsuit, as we saw with the Atlantic regarding Kash Patel and what they say is his drinking habits. So Senator Dick Durbin replied to this post from the Senate Judiciary Democrats, and it says, new reporting details Kash Patel traveling with a personalized branded bourbon, bottom shelf bourbon for a bottom shelf FBI director. So the reporting, where's the reporting? I don't see an article. I don't see a link. I don't see a headline. I don't see anything. So what are they talking about? I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Probably a bunch of nothing, bunch of hot air. Senator Dick Durbin, who is piggybacking off of the Senate Judiciary Democrats, again, without any sources whatsoever. He says, Kash Patel is the most unqualified, dangerous FBI director we've ever had. While Trump is waging an unpopular war with Iran and global threats remain high, Patel's focus is elsewhere, himself. So there you go. And by the way, yeah, Kash Patel, he's suing the Atlantic for $250 million for, what was it, slander or something like that, because they said that, or according to The Atlantic. He's got like a heavy drinking habit, and Kash Patel says that that's absolutely not the case. Looks like he had one beer. I don't know how many beers he had that night, but that was when the men's hockey team at the Olympics won the gold. So he was there celebrating with them. And I don't know. I don't know if there's really other pictures of Kash Patel pounding beer. I don't know. From Elon Musk, Hitler, he was a socialist. Therefore, all socialists are Hitler. So that was short to the point. Came across that. Almost 100 million views, 575,000 likes. Then you had like the leftists in there that were making points, mild points like, well, Hitler was also a painter. So does that mean that all painters are Hitler? I don't know. Leader John Thune enjoyed visiting with students at Winter High School today. So you might wonder, okay, well, why the hell am I sharing this? Well, the reason I'm sharing this is because it did get 201 likes, but look at the ratio. It got 10-1 comments over likes. And you can only imagine the Save America Act and everything else, nuking the filibuster, so on and so forth. And so Americans elected you in good faith, and you betrayed them. Passed the Save America Act, go down in history as a traitor. Apparently, there's some I think what they call grassroots conservatives or Republicans that are trying to oust leader John Thune as the majority Republican in the Senate. Leader John Thune. So yeah, I usually don't go very deep in the comments because this is the X platform, and I'm sure a lot of this stuff, when you go down far enough, it starts to cross over the not so YouTube friendly boundary line. Good, you must truly hate America. How about doing what we, your constituents, are asking for? Pass the Save America Act. You can tell them they won't be able to vote in the future. That'll be stolen. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the irony that he's visiting a high school, probably giving a speech to like, their bright futures and, live the American dream and everything. But yet he's not, pushing some of the most important legislation, arguably in probably decades, really, passing the Save America Act. It is that important. It's extremely important, but he's just not going to get it done. Step down. You are no leader. We've had enough. Okay. All right. Anyway, I think we get the idea. And heading on to Secretary Doug Burgum, the U.S. Geological Survey lithium discovery is a massive opportunity for America, and the president is capitalizing on it. Thanks to his deregulatory agenda, we can more easily mine, refine, and manufacture here at home to bring down costs for American families. Now, I'm not sure how much of this lithium that they found, but it would be very significant if they found enough to really start manufacturing lithium for, obviously, batteries, from anything like electric vehicles to like probably even battery packs for like solar systems for your house, or even all the way down to your smartphone. Because I believe that China, they're the ones that are refining and producing the vast majority of lithium batteries, and we're trying to get off of our dependence of China. That would kind of be nice if we did that. A recent discovery in Appalachia could unlock U.S. dominance in lithium, an increasingly critical mineral. Policymakers should eliminate processing and regulatory hurdles that have kept similar riches locked away and ensure that the United States is well positioned to take advantage of its richness in this important asset. Isn't the Appalachian Mountains like among the oldest mountain ranges on Earth? I think like the Appalachians are like 3 or 3.5 billion years old or something crazy like that. I think the Ozarks are also like crazy old. The Ozarks might be the oldest mountain range, but what do I know? Last week, the U.S. Geological Survey announced that 2.3 million metric tons of previously undiscovered but economically recoverable lithium could be extracted from Appalachia. Could you imagine owning a portion of that land that they just happen to find it? Like if you own like 50 acres of land out in Appalachia and they discovered this like massive lithium deposit on it, that'd be insane. Anyway, so last week, the USGS announced okay, so I think I read that. So there could be enough to replace 328 years of U.S. imports at last year's level. What? So the lithium is found in pegmatites, large-grained rocks similar to granite. So extremely tough rock. The discovery could be transformative for the region and the nation. Yeah, that's true, man. A lot of riches. Lithium is sometimes referred to as white gold and is important to many sectors of the economy. Oh, yeah, that's right. This gets paywalled, but that's all right. I got to back up. So let's click on this. Scroll down a little bit. This one has no paywall, as I mentioned. It's on MSN. So we'll take a look at this. I don't know if it's an exact copy-paste article, but it should be close enough. Not that we're probably going to get a whole lot more information than we already got. But the USGS confirms the massive Appalachian lithium find with global implications, 2.3 million metric tons of economically recoverable lithium in Appalachia. enough to replace over 3 centuries of current U.S. imports. So in other words, if they were to mine all of that lithium and they just stockpiled it somewhere, we would have enough lithium to provide, like I said, battery power and whatever else that we use lithium for to supply our country at its current rate for the next 300 years. That would be kind of nice, because China would really take a massive loss if we were to be able to be self-sufficient with regard to lithium. The U.S. Geological Survey confirmed parts of Appalachia. Okay, we already got that. Let's see, up to 130. Okay, yeah, here we go. Check this out. The volume could replace 328 years of U.S. imports at current consumption levels and power up to 130 million electric vehicles. All right, well, I figured it would have been a lot more than that, but still a lot. The find could elevate the U.S. from a marginal producer, just 0.3% of global output in 2024, to a future leader in lithium supply. All from Appalachia, of all places. Strategic implications for global supply chains. China currently controls about 65% of global lithium refining and leads in battery and electric vehicle production, while the U.S. remains heavily reliant on imports, particularly from South America. The Appalachian reserves offer the U.S. an opportunity to lessen this dependence and strengthen domestic mineral security. If developed, these deposits could contribute to a more diversified global supply chain and reduce exposure to potential trade or pricing pressures linked to concentrated foreign control. And the roadblocks, regulatory roadblocks. Extracting lithium from pegmatite rock is technically demanding and requires processing infrastructure that is scarce in the U.S., where only one active lithium mine operates. The National Environmental Policy Act can delay mining approvals for years, as seen in other projects. These factors mean that despite the discovery scale, significant investment and policy adjustments are needed before it can meaningfully impact domestic supply. So in other words, if South America completely cut us off from our dependence of lithium and China did the same thing, we would simply be at a massive disadvantage. It would be just government regulations that would really cripple us as a country with regard to our dependence on lithium. Even though it's like right below the ground, we could probably start mining it tomorrow. But set up the machinery, okay, it might take a month, it might take a couple of months to set up the infrastructure to start actually mining it out. But no, we can't do that. We have to go through years and years of regulatory bullshit first. Possible futures for U.S. lithium. One path forward involves streamlined permitting, infrastructure expansion, and investment in refining, enabling the U.S. to supply domestic battery manufacturing by the 2030s. Another scenario sees delays from environmental reviews, community concerns, and funding gaps, keeping U.S. lithium output low despite large reserves. The direction taken will shape the nation's role in a rapidly growing global market for this critical mineral. And it is a critical mineral. So, not sure how quickly they would be able to start getting access to it. Not sure if an executive order would be enough to make it happen quickly or not. I mean, maybe it would to some extent, of course, until some leftist judge, some climate change activist decides to strike it down almost immediately. Senator John Barrasso, he says the death tax exemption was a huge thing. Actually, Cheyenne Chamber, Greater Cheyenne Chamber. Okay, so yeah, the death tax exemption. Republicans made the death tax much more favorable so that people could keep their small businesses, their farms, and their ranches in the family, which I would assume probably the finances do, or however much money as part of the estate that'd be left behind. I would hope that would not be subject to too much death tax, if
Probably
any.
One of the big ones that I hear about from our businesses is businesses very concerned about being able to sustain their business through their children into the future. So the death tax expansion was a huge thing. You know, if you are on a ranch, $5 million isn't what it used to be in assets, but being able to get that to $11 million is a huge thing for our businesses. So we are deeply appreciative of the work the senator did to make sure that our citizens and our businesses were taken care of in the big, beautiful bill that's coming.
All right, well, there you go. Up to $11 million. I don't know. So that means you don't have to pay any, like zero death taxes if it's under that figure? That's what it said. I don't know. That's what it sounds like. Margot Martin, and she's with the White House and the official White House account, special assistant to the president and communications advisor. You have the most important job there is in America or any place else. The president hosts a Mother's Day luncheon in the White House Rose Garden. Okay, so this happened earlier.
America's moms are really raising the future of our country, the most important. You have the most, we don't call it a job because when you love it, it's not a job, but let's, for this purpose, You have the most important job there is in America or any place else, and you're doing an incredible job. I just want to wish you all a very happy Mother's Day. We're going to have a great Mother's Day. And for those mothers that lost their child, many of whom are with us today, the angel moms and others, Gold Star moms, we love you especially. We love you maybe even the most. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
There you go. Mother's Day is happening on Sunday. So don't forget, if you celebrate the Hallmark holidays, you know, get the flowers and whatnot. All right, so I'm going to finish up with the Labour Party over in the UK. I know it's not swamp related, but this is big news. And it came out of the UK, obviously. And I'll just read the description and then we'll check out a few posts on this. So Labour loses hundreds of seats as the Reform Party, Reform UK, surges in local elections. Early results from England's May 7th local elections show Labour suffering a net loss of 443 council seats so far, with Reform UK leading at 627 seats and a net gain of 625, especially in Brexit voting areas like the North and Midlands. Labour lost control of at least 12 councils, including Tameside, where Reform took 18 of 19 seats, and projections point up to 1,200 total losses, the worst for an incumbent government in decades. Reform gained 4 councils, including its first London borough in Havering, while Conservatives dropped 276 seats and Liberal Democrats and Greens made gains. Starmer took responsibility amid internal pressure as Nigel Farage celebrated a historic shift from Labour voters. And from Eric Doherty, wow, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's party just got walloped by Nigel Farage's Reform, which gained over 350 council seats. Starmer is cooked. These are tough results, Starmer said, but I'm not going to walk away. He should step down. He has lost the confidence of the people.
Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party taking a big hit in nationwide elections as early results show the Reform Party winning key races across England. The Reform Party, led by President Trump ally Nigel Farage, gained over 350 council seats. The results leading to questions about Starmer's political future, but he says he's not going anywhere.
Let me be clear, these are really tough results. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And the voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. I was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges.
Votes are still being tallied, but these results are just the latest sign of Starmer's plunging approval ratings across the UK. Sir Keir Starmer.
All right. Well, yeah, and Nigel Farage, he reminds me of 2016 when the whole Brexit thing first happened. There was a ton of stuff that happened in 2016. It was a crazy year. And so he was leading the whole Brexit thing. And there was somebody on it was Twitter back then, of course, but somebody on there said that I'm glad that we'll finally have this vote done and sealed, and it's a done deal. Brexit's not going to survive, because if I have to wake up one more day to Nigel Farage's face, I'll I'll delete myself, but he used the K word instead. So he posted that at like 11 o'clock at night, and then at like 6:45 a.m., Nigel Farage himself ends up dropping a post to that guy's Twitter account. And this guy he wasn't anybody famous. He's just like some regular Twitter user or whatever. I don't know how the hell Nigel Farage found him, but Nigel Farage, like, he posted an image of himself with like this reddish looking face with this like big ass grin that he has, showing all of his teeth, and it says "wakey wakey." And that, of course, was when they won the vote on Brexit. And speaking of which, Nigel Farage, MP, Reform is currently winning in one in three seats all over the country. We are a truly national party and here to stay. And one more follow-up, Nigel Farage. This was, what was that, about 14 hours ago? Yeah, so it was like earlier today. I'm delighted that Reform won 53% of the vote across the council seats in Clacton last night. We must be doing something right. And one more, we got it back. Angela Rayner left crushed as 18 of 19 seats in her area of Tameside go to Reform, the Reform Party. And from the Labour Party, Labour was elected to change this country. Oh yeah, they changed the UK all right. Oh, they changed it in many ways. I don't know if it was any good ways. They certainly imported a lot of change. That is what the public want and what they deserve. Tough days like today don't weaken our determination to deliver that change. They strengthen it. Let's hear what he says.
We made some big calls to stabilize our public finances, to invest in our public services, not to get dragged into a war in Iran. Although we were right to level with the public about the scale and depth of the challenges we faced, we didn't do enough to convince them that things will get better.
Well, maybe you lost
and
because
that
you
is why in
didn't help
coming
the United
days I'm
States
going to set out the steps that we will take to deliver the change that they want and that they deserve. So these are tough results. But tough days like this, they don't weaken my resolve to deliver the change that I promised at the general election. They strengthen my resolve to do so.
All right, I don't know what change he's talking about. I don't follow British politics. I can only imagine that it's probably as vague as Democrats claim that the change that it is that they want to make. Keir Starmer, these are tough results for Labour. There's no sugarcoating it. We've lost brilliant Labour representatives who stood up for their communities. People are still frustrated. Their lives aren't changing fast enough. We haven't offered enough hope or optimism for the future. I'm sure that's probably an understatement, the understatement of the century. I was elected to change this country. Tough days like this don't weaken my determination to do that. They strengthen it. This one's a little bit longer.
Are tough. They are very tough. And there is no sugarcoating this. We have lost brilliant Labour representatives across the country. These are people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And that hurts. And it should hurt. And I take responsibility. When voters send a message like this, we must reflect and we must respond. I think the vast majority of people do understand that we face huge challenges as a country. We've had a series of economic shocks in recent years, and there's a very difficult international situation that we face. They know that. But they still want their lives to improve. They still want to see the change that we promised. They know the status quo is letting them down and they're frustrated. They don't feel the change. I understand that. I get that. I was elected to deal with these challenges. We made some big calls to stabilize our public finances, to invest in our public services, not to get dragged into a war in Iran. But we also made unnecessary mistakes. One of which was that although we were right to level with the public about the scale and depth of the challenges we faced, we didn't do enough to convince them that things will get better, that things will improve. The hope. And that is why in coming days I'm going to set out the steps that we will take to deliver the change that they want and that they deserve, so that every child can go as far as their talent or ability will take them, not held back by poverty, so that every community can have what it needs, a secure, safe place for everybody to live, households and families not feeling constantly held back by a cost of living crisis, and a Britain where everybody can feel proud of the place where they live and they work. So these are tough results. But tough days like this, they don't weaken my resolve to deliver the change that I promised at the general election. They strengthen my resolve to do so. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, which party was it that imported millions of immigrants into the UK? It was probably the Labour Party. I would imagine it was probably the Labour Party. So, I mean, is that the change that they're talking about? Because that's probably what drove up the cost of living, because that's what contributed to our heightened cost of living by millions of illegal immigrants pouring into the country, because they all got to live somewhere. They all are going to consume utilities, they're going to eat food. Our system wasn't set up to take in that huge amount of people in a very short amount of time, just like I'm sure the UK was probably the same way. Simple supply and demand. You import millions of people, everything's going to get crazy expensive. And also, maybe people just, they don't want to get arrested for practicing Christianity on a street corner, because that's happening in the UK. Actually, there's probably much more ridiculous and egregious things that people are getting arrested for, like doing practically nothing, for like posting a meme or posting a joke. Like, even a lighthearted joke. People end up getting arrested for shit like that in the UK. I would assume probably driven by the Labour Party, but again, I don't know. I don't follow British politics all that much. Really don't follow it at all. All right, so breaking 911 is the last thing I got. Hikers rushed down after Mount Dukono in Indonesia erupted on Friday, killing at least 3 people and sending ash nearly 6 miles high. About 20 climbers were on the volcano, despite warnings to stay out of the restricted zone. So I guess, strong and independent, and I don't care what you say. I'm going to do what I want. That whole attitude, I can imagine. And this is what ended up happening. So you better heed those warnings. That'd be scary as hell.
Today, Friday 8th, we are lucky. We already climbed down. Be careful, guys. There are still many local tourists. Oh my God.
Yikes, man. All right. Absolutely wild. Absolutely crazy. Big volcano eruption that happened. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. So if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a quick like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll be back on Monday night as we explore the swamp Monday through Friday and the politicians and the bureaucrats, the agencies, the administration. And I also post daily on X, which is where you can peek at some of the content for the next episode. And don't forget, the video clips from tonight will begin dropping on the channel tomorrow around 8, 9. I don't know. Sometimes I sleep in on Saturday. It'll drop at some point in the morning. Probably 3 or 4 video clips from tonight. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. Always remember to stay positive. God bless the troops, and God bless America. It's 11:41 already?